Hello, everyone, and welcome to the spoiler discussion for the Fitz in the Full Trilogy, which is the final trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings by Rob and Hobb. I am joined here by four awesome content creators, four guests that I'm excited to have here to discuss this series. Three of them have read it, quite a while ago. I know Jake has reread it, and I think Madison is making her way through the series again.
I've only reread Farseer. I'm a fraud fan.
Okay, Jake's not a real fan, and he's only reread one series.
Bye, Jake.
Bye. And Jordan Jordan read it, just finished with me for the first time through. So we decided to chat about it because there's a lot to unpack with these books. So how about we go around, just have everyone introduce yourself, maybe say like when you last read Realm of the Elderlings or when you finished the series, and maybe some just very quick general thoughts on this trilogy specifically and how you think it ended, if it was deserved of, continuing Fitz's story past Tawny Man and so on. So Jimmy, how about we start with you?
Oh, okay. I'm Jimmy C of House Nuts and big buckkeep guy over here. Love the final trilogy. I do think it was worthy to succeed Tawny Man as the final trilogy. We don't talk about Rain Wilds, but Fitz in the Full, I think, is kind of outstanding for the sole fact that there's like obviously really big risks taken in the final trilogy. And for me, I couldn't imagine Realm of the Elderlings without that. That is part of what makes it for me so magnificent. So happy to be here. Happy to talk about Rob and Hobb. And I'm excited.
Awesome. Jake, how about you?
I like Fitz in the Full Trilogy are three of my favorite books ever. So if they didn't exist, I'd be sad. I also think at the time of reading Fool's Fate, I was like, this is the perfect ending. And then we started Fitz in the Fool, and it's like a bunch of this conflict thing started happening. And I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing. That kind of needed to happen. And so now in hindsight, I'm like, wait, no, this has to exist. Like, there's all this stuff it needs to address. Like, the Fool just left, and we kind of know those people are kind of messed up. Like, why would we think that would go well? Also, I just like to warn everyone, I had like the flu a week ago and still randomly cough. I'm going to try and mute my mic when I do, but if I fail, I apologize. But yes, series rules, trilogy rules, and Assassin's Fate is the GOAT book.
Nice. Jordan, you go next. Madison.
Jordan from Jordan Reads. I, like Alex said, I just finished reading this last month, I think. And yeah, it was phenomenal, amazing. We'll get further into my thoughts of each book, but yeah, the whole series was nuts, and by the end, I was a puddle on the floor. I was
Great.
Jimmy Nuts.
Madison,
how
about
about
you?
that leaves me. Okay, so I'm Madison, and gosh, so I read this trilogy in October of last year, so not that long ago. And as cliche as it sounds, like I really haven't stopped thinking about it since. So it still feels really fresh, but I'm sure we're going to uncover all kinds of things that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so glad we're getting to that, because it really is a series that at least I need to verbally process. And luckily, as soon as I finished, I contacted Derry and I was like, invite me onto your channel immediately, because I need you to make me cry some more. Like, I'm addicted to crying, apparently. So yeah, I think it's just an absolute masterpiece, and it's just amazing how each series within the Realm of the Elderlings, it brings so much more that you didn't even know you needed. And then when you have the privilege to be able to look at the whole thing as a unit, it's just about as magnificent and flawless as I can imagine a story being. So I'm just really glad to be here, because I don't think I'll ever get tired of talking about this story.
Also, I forgot to answer the main question, but I read it in June of 2021, which I think is the first of
I didn't answer that at all.
So I also have the best excuse if I get things wrong and don't remember things. And I would just like to put that out there, because it's been the longest since I've read it. So none of them have a good excuse, but I do.
I don't know. Did I finish it before you?
No.
You sure?
You must have been. How were you,
sure.
Jimmy?
I read it last year in the spring.
Yeah, I read it in 2021, which is 2 years ago. So.
Damn.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even quite the story.
Time flies.
Yeah.
Wait, no, I just did my top books. No, I did read in 2021. Eat it.
No, I still read it before you though, because I was clicking all your reactions and stuff. So yeah,
It's not a race, you guys.
It is.
okay, but
though.
if it is a race, then I won.
All right. Yeah, Madison, I think that was very well said. I totally agree that every sub-series within the realm of the Elderlings kind of brings its own thing, and then as a whole, it's better for all of that. I think I was a little bit anxious going into this just because I enjoyed Rain Wild Chronicles, but I didn't love it, and I kind of expected that, so it wasn't a huge surprise or anything.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I had seen a few readers who within the couple of months before I had read it, who were very let down by the last trilogy. And I was like, what were you possibly let down by? And so I went in kind of hesitant and then read it and just absolutely love this trilogy and totally think that this story needs it. Honestly, I don't even think that much of it was complete after looking back at the end of Tawny Man.
Yes.
Kind of like Jimmy said and Jake said, after we have the full story that's in Fitz in the Full. So for this stream, this is full spoilers. So if you're here and you're watching, then either you've read the books or you just don't care. But we're just going to dive right on into spoiler discussions. And I think we're going to go just start off book by book just to keep it some structure, just because these books are massive. There's lots going on and it's just easy to glance over some stuff. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Fool's Assassin. And overall, after just finishing this trilogy, I still think Fool's Assassin might be my favorite book in the trilogy. And I think just because so much of it is reminiscent of what I liked about Fool's Errand, but also in kind of the style that I prefer. So a little bit more gothic, a little darker. Mm-hmm. And there was a very climactic ending and a lot of craziness and risks that were taken by Rob and Hobb in this book that I thought really paid off. So I guess let's just dive right into Fool's Assassin. I think, Jordan, how about you go first, since you are the one who most recently read it outside of me. What do you think about
also think that it's my favorite of the trilogy. I'll question mark at the end of that. But I think that it was like probably the slowest of the three, which was so nice after coming out of the Rain Wild Chronicles. It was so nice to just like be back with Fitz and seeing him living a happy life, which I knew it wouldn't last, of course, because it's Robin Hobb, but like he finally got like a little bit of time to just like be happy, and it was so lovely. And I just think that the whole like everything that like one of my favorite characters in the whole series was introduced. V is amazing, and I love her so. I was so hesitant at first when there was actually a child. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, but then like as we went on with her story, I love her so much, and I just thought that that first book was so good.
That's a great point. Honestly, when Molly kept saying she was pregnant, I really didn't know.
I didn't believe it at all.
Yeah. Like it honestly, I'm so proud of the fantasy community and the realm of the Elderlings community for like really respecting that secret POV, because I was completely surprised by that, and it was not
I had no
for
idea.
me. I was so like, and I just think it's so cool that Robin Hobb was able to pull off a surprise POV that late in the series and make it work so well. Like such a impact.
Nope, there goes Madison. Madison has been killed. Someone watch out for Assassin.
Madison.
Sorry, I will say we have a little bit of family drama. Sorry, we have some family drama going on, and I tried to contact all of my family members to be like, hey, I'm going to be on a live stream. Don't call me. But apparently I miss a few. So if that happens again, don't worry. I'll be back. Sorry.
You aren't being assassinated? Good.
Well, these books are only barely about Assassin, so.
True. There are definitely some fandoms, who shall not be named, who would be like, everyone knows there's a new POV in the last trilogy. It's not even a spoiler.
I got yelled at in a comment.
I had no idea.
I got yelled at in a comment today because I said that in my Assassin's Apprentice or Farseer trilogy no spoiler review that I said Fitz was a bastard. And he was like, you're giving up the whole book, dude.
Like, that's like the first page.
Eat shit. Like I was.
How dare you?
It blew my mind.
That's the premise. But I don't even know if I've ever seen someone else get spoiled that there's another POV and
that's impressive to
every
me.
single time.
It is impressive,
This would be the downside. If there's ever an adaptation and Realm of the Elderlings super blows up, we will lose every person getting to Fitz and the Fool and all the fans just getting to sit by and waiting for them to read like chapter 10 or whatever the first B POV chapter is and being like, wait, what? There's another point of view.
I did get spoiled on one thing, and that was Patience being killed. But it was just in Jimmy's Discord actually, and someone had said it, or Patience dying, and I was like, wait, what?
Well, we've established that Jimmy's Discord
I didn't know
is full
how
of
it
Realm of the
happened, but
haters, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was,
they just stay
Wild
spoiling.
West.
They just want to ruin it for everybody.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Can we just talk about how all of Fool's Assassin is basically Robin Hobb just being like, yeah, I can write a book with no plot, and it's completely brilliant.
Literally,
deal with it. Good
scrubs.
Plot's over.
No plot, and I was here for every page. I remember Alex and I were messaging each other like nothing's happening, but I'm in love. Like it's perfection.
There's another long series of long books that has a book with basically no plot, and it's everyone's least favorite. This one has like no plot, and it's like people generally really like it because
I read Suttree. There's nothing that can stop me when it comes to plotlessness. Like, I don't even I don't know. I don't even think about that stuff. Like, people are like, "Oh, great book," but she forgot the plot. I'm like, shut up.
I was on a live stream the other day.
This is a prologue.
Pete was pitching something, and he's like, "It's really slow. There's hardly any plot." And he kept going on. I was like, "Say less, my guy. Like, I'm in.
Send it over."
You talk about Mish just commented this, and
I was
Molly. If you'd asked me before this book, would have not made my top 50 Realm of the Elderlings characters.
No, I didn't like Molly before.
I loved her in this book. In Fool's Assassin, this book turned me around, and I was like, "Oh, Fitz, I see what you see in Molly here now. That makes sense now."
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yep. One thing that Fool's Assassin.
That.
Sorry.
You go,
I was gonna say one thing that Fool's Assassin did for me though is it forever answered that question that pops up when just like question of the day or whatever. When people are like, if you could live in one fantasy location, Withywood's, period.
Yeah.
Stop.
100%.
Yeah.
So
like
cool.
Withywood's is the perfect place on the planet in my mind. I like how when Fitz is growing up, when he's a little boy, he sees it as like a punishment. Like he's thinking Withywood's is somewhere you go to be put out to pasture. It's somewhere that you go to. But when he reaches that age, he's just like, this is perfect, actually. And it's such a wonderful manor home. I just love everything about that slice of life that we get at Withywood's. To me, is just like, I could read that over and over and over again.
So good.
I know. I think opening the book and seeing the map of Withywood's, I was just like, what is going on here? Hell yeah.
Yeah, I love the map. Big fan.
Yeah, so cool. Really sets the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch saying about Molly's death, I think I felt so blindsided by this entire thing when I was reading this event, because I believe this was the first or second BPOV. It might have been the first BPOV. I don't know what it was, but it was like chapter 10, I believe. And at the very end of the chapter, after we had this whole chapter of B exploring Withywood's and like, talking like with her, with Fitz and Molly, at the very end, Molly dies and drops dead. And then you see Fitz come in, and Fitz is like reacting to her death, and it's just heartbreaking. I totally agree. I never really liked Molly. I never hated her. I think I disliked her the most in Farseer. But I think after that, she was kind of, she was fine. And I think when we got to this moment, I was just like, holy moly, I was really hit hard out of nowhere. And this was after Patience had died off page. And so that was that was interesting, because I didn't know how I felt about Patience dying off page at the beginning. But once she did, and once we got Molly's death, I was like, okay, now this only makes this Molly's death hit so much harder for me in that moment.
Oof.
I think Patience death being off screen was only a little bit worse for me because Burik's death also happened off screen, and that was like the last thing I really remembered from Fool's Fate. Like, out of all the things that happened in that book, that was the thing that I was like, oh my god. And I defended the Burik one because I said, that's kind of how life goes sometimes. But then Patience off screen, I was like, what's going on here? Like, I'm not digging that. But I think you're right. I don't think you could have those deaths that close together, and also time has passed, so It is what it is. Someone commented on the fact that younger women were hitting on Fitz in town, and I don't know why, but I remember that vividly from Fool's Assassin.
Yep.
And I remember just loving that scene for some reason, because it's like a reminder that Fitz hasn't aged as much as Molly. And on top of that, you know, it's Fitz being a Chad, which is kind of nice. Just being a bro and walking around town getting hit on. So
but being too oblivious to like really like understand, because it's Fitz.
It's still like it still fits. And I don't know, for some reason I love that scene.
Also, I find it kind of ironic how in Tawny Man he's actually like pretty young, but he feels really old at the start of Fool's Errand. And then in Fool's Assassin, we're actually like he's kind of old. He feels a lot younger than his age, like physically, because magic healing go burr.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that scene is very vivid, and I think just because of what you were saying of him being a Chad, but also the fact that, you know, this is one of the first moments where you actually see the difference and how Molly is aging and how Fitz is not aging nearly as quickly as her in, you know, present time as he's telling the story. And it just is just interesting, and it really adds to kind of the weight and burden that Fitz is carrying by having all this.
I mean, I feel this in a non-magical sense too, though, because like dudes just get hotter and turn into silver foxes, and us ladies over here turn into hags. So I'm like, I get it, Molly. I get it.
I mean, if you need an example, you have Zaddy Philip Chase. You know, it's
right.
Total Zaddy.
Severy says it was really interesting to see Fitz from someone else's perspective, and I totally agree. This is the first time we get, obviously, because everything's been first person from Fitz's point of view, every single Fitz book leading up to this. And this is the first time we see Fitz from an external standpoint. And how did you guys feel about that? Did you like that aspect of it? Do you, did your feelings about Fitz change at all by seeing the external POV?
I liked it in the first book a lot. And then I liked it in the third book, but I think in the second book, it frustrated me. Because one of my like least favorite tropes that happens a lot in fantasy is like the miscommunication due to distance. So like B getting abducted and everything, like we know what's going on, but then Fitz thinks she's dead, and it's like this whole thing, and to me it ended up just feeling more frustrating than sad. But then of course by the end of the third book I was like, okay, it was fine. But while I was reading it, I felt very frustrated by a lot of it. But the first book, B's POV, was amazing. And like just getting to see, like, because that's when we really realized how smart she was. Like when we really realized that she was like not what Fitz thought she was. And so I did love it in the first book.
I think B's existence and Fitz's like dunciness like is really showcased with B, because of course as a reader we're like putting stuff together because that's how books work. But I'm sitting there, I'm like, so she looks like somebody you know that's magical and you shared a body with, and he's the only person you've ever known that's anything like her, and you're not starting to make some connections that she might be literally different.
I pointed this out so many times to Alex. I was like, Fitz is an idiot. All the clues are there.
He's just like,
I haven't caught it when the pregnancy was like really long. I was like, wait, the fool ages slower. And then I'm like, okay, so the fool ages this slowly, which would mean that the pregnancy would actually be this long. And then that was like exactly right. And the kid looked like the fool.
Yeah,
and I was
like the fool.
Okay, Fitz, this is like.
And never once is he like, I wonder if never once.
He's so clueless.
Yep. And at the very beginning of the book, I think there's this. I was going to say there's a scene where Fool's messenger or someone shows up, and Fitz is like, oh, if I had known Fool was trying to get a hold of me, things may have ended up differently than they had been. And so I think having that kind of in my ear, in my mind, when I was going into learning about the pregnancy and then learning about, the bee is actually a real person who's now born and is a new POV, I was like, okay, this is definitely leading to that. And it was frustrating to have Fitz have no idea what was going on.
It's like he couldn't get past that phrasing of like the fool having a son, And I'm like, has your relationship with the Fool taught you nothing about like gender
Literally.
fluidity and like prophecy or anything? Okay, dummy.
Dwally was the same. Not to jump to Dwally or anything, but she was the same way. Like she was so once she found out, oh, he's not a boy, then she was like, oh my gosh, everything's out of control. This can't be. We messed up, and then was freaking out and just got worse. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I actually love the restriction of information trope and distance trope. But really big fan of it. It happens a lot in A Song of Ice and Fire as well.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But I've always been fascinated by like how information travels, especially like I grew up without the internet, but it also like has been it's been more in my life than not in my life, right? So I've always just thought about how crazy it is that like if your phone's off the hook, like no one can reach you. Like I don't know, there's something about that, like an information not traveling at hyper speeds that fascinates me and gives me like a sense of anxiety almost, and makes it as more like a engaging experience for me. So I've always been a really, really big fan of it, and I actually like it in Fool's Quest. I know most people do not. The only thing I don't like, people are just like, Fitz, go save your daughter, and it's like, well, he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Right.
I almost wished that in that book we didn't like. I wish we didn't get B's POV just in that book, just so that like we found out at the same time Fitz did that B was alive. Like I felt like that would have been like a huge reveal kind of thing. Maybe it wouldn't have worked, but I think just I was so frustrated through so much of it. Like him just being. I get why he was sad, but I was like, stop being sad and go find her.
Go do something.
Yeah.
Fitz isn't doing what you want
like,
him to, and he's being thick. Shocked.
He's being thick.
Fitz and I would not get along in real life.
Yeah. He's easier to love from a distance.
Yeah.
Somehow, like I feel like he's almost the most dumb in this trilogy. Like,
oh, for
he's
sure.
he's the most.
I think so.
One thing I noticed, like when getting like finding quotes for the series in Farseer, like all the like good quotes are from the Fool, and then as you go through time, like more and more become from in Farseer. Fitz is like philosophy. I don't have time for that. And then like in this, and now by the time we get to like Fool's assassin, he's just like, no, yeah, we're gonna be talking about philosophy stuff quite a bit more.
I think it's also probably like he's more self-aware by the end. So like he's like. In the beginning, he's like, I know everything. I know what I'm talking about. By the end, he's like, actually, no, I'm an idiot.
True.
Life has a way of
humbling us.
humbling
In
us.
this book, Chade. The Chade stuff in Fool's Assassin is so good.
Oh, it's so good.
Chade in general in this entire trilogy was...
Yeah, it might be his best trilogy.
Such a surprise.
Yeah, I think so.
Probably is. I think Chade is maybe the character in fiction I've changed my opinion on the most. Where I swear, like throughout this entire series, I was like, Chade, you stupid dick! I want to punch the crap out of you. And I was like, oh, Chade, you're so good. And that's just like constantly, just whatever situation.
Yeah. Tawny Man, he frustrated me so much.
So much
throughout that trilogy.
So much.
Yeah, he was just peanut butter jelly the whole time because he couldn't do the skill.
Have you tried getting good, Chade? Like, come on.
Have you just ever tried? Like,
that was actually when I reread Assassin's Apprentice. One of the first things I noticed is like Chade immediately, like when Fitz is going to start, like he might be able to learn the skill. Chade's like, yes, you have to learn the skill. Like he was obsessed with it already. Fitz just didn't notice because Fitz was like 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the other big things that happens as a result of B becoming a part of the story is this is the first time that Fitz is really challenged with fatherhood, because yes, he had Hap in the second in Tawny Man, but Hap had no problem with Fitz really until like some disagreements over what he should do with his life.
Incident with a relationship.
Hap makes Fitz look smart.
Oh yeah,
yes.
For sure.
That's how dumb Hap is.
B, yeah, and B totally changes it, and Fitz has to fight to not necessarily earn B's respect, but once Molly dies, B's connection with her dad at that point had already been kind of convoluted, and they didn't really know what to think about each other. And he felt like he had to kind of, work harder to get her respect and become the father that he thought she needed in his life. And he just kept mentioning how it was frustrating how he couldn't feel her with his wit, and he couldn't, she just, I don't know. I just
like
think
she's a scentless one. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like another
Literally.
clue.
yeah. This is so weird.
But, and I do feel for him though, because it's like Fitz has been put in the role, in the position to act as a father figure for several people at this point. And it's a lot easier to be have a ward or be like a cool uncle or be a stepdad. Like that's a different dynamic. And then when you have your own child and it's nothing like what you expected, I mean, later in life, it was completely unexpected. And he was also grieving for Molly's whole pregnancy, that Molly was losing her mind. So he had no connection to this kid throughout the entire pregnancy. And then when she was born and she was an anomaly, basically, he just never made that connection. And it's like, yeah, it was a lot of frustrating choices on Fitz's end as well. But also it was like worst case scenario for someone who's already emotionally very unavailable and dense. And then you pair them with somebody who needs a very specific style of parenting. Like, I don't know, it just wasn't a great setup from the beginning for him to be like a typical, circle hole, circle peg kind of dad. Like it was a unique situation, and he doesn't adapt well because he's not emotionally intuitive.
He's not smart.
No.
And yet he's relatable. Interesting.
I mean,
Although he had a pretty good dad moment, which was when there was I think Lant was the bad teacher. I read this book a while ago, okay? And I kind of was like, oh, now B's going to be stuck with like this crappy teacher and like this toxic class. And Fitz just fixed that shit. Fitz was like, he found about that shit. He brought Lant aside and he was like, listen up. This is not going to happen.
Yeah, I have zero tolerance.
And then there was like the great conversation with B where he's like, I'm going to take your side. So like try and not be a dick because I don't want to take your side if you're being a dick, but I'm taking your side. And you know what? Fitz, you did a good, competent, smart parenting thing. And I just feel as we crap on you for probably this entire show for making dumb decisions that we should point out you did a smart thing.
Yeah, that made me very proud of him.
Yeah.
I was very proud of him.
He's done a lot.
He's grown.
Yeah. I just think his bad moments just stick out so much more than the good moments because how they impact everyone else
right
in the
story.
And
it's easy for us to, like, as the reader, to be like, oh no, you shouldn't do this because then this is going to happen and everyone's going to think this. But he doesn't see it that way because he's him. So again, it's really easy for us to pick it apart and say, well, this is what I would have done. But really, if you're looking at every situation he faces, if you're looking at it objectively, he really does do pretty understandable choices. It just hurts to watch it when you know it's the wrong choice.
Yeah.
I imagine if we played back a lot of our lives when we were younger, we would also cringe and be like, no one's this stupid. Knowing damn well.
Me and my last life.
Like, because we have an advantage that all these characters don't, and that's that we know they're in a book.
Yeah.
So we know conflict is going to happen.
Yeah.
I think I commented this in all caps while reading a book. I was like, why don't these people know they're in a book, damn it? These idiots.
The plot will thicken.
If I knew I was the protagonist of a book, let alone a fantasy novel, first I'd be like, shit. And then that would change how I'd make decisions. Like, I wouldn't say things like, what could possibly go wrong? Make sure to communicate with people clearly. And many other things like that.
Monologue while winning the sword fight.
Yeah, always monologue after.
After.
There's one thing I have learned from reading novels, and if I ever decide to try and conquer the world and come close to success, I will not fail because I'm I'll probably fail for some other reason, but I will not fail because I monologue. I'll just the hero or whatever. If I was the villain of a story, I'd just shoot him. And I'd be like, okay, now I can monologue. We're good. Win first. Then
it's like an anime. They stop the entire fight for 3 episodes. So
or
explain what's happening.
For that matter.
True.
But
an Oberyn Martell moment,
I was going to say
really, every author, I think, every author has a villain who monologues first.
There's definitely
like,
well, it's because we love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also, like, I'm not
There's
gonna lie, I feel like it'd be really tempting to gloat. Like, I think it would take a lot of conviction to not monologue.
Yeah.
If I was really
I don't
sure in my
know,
victory.
man. When you're in combat, like legit, like
No,
I've
not
never
in
felt that
combat,
way.
but if you've
Yeah,
like defeated
after
them and you think you're
they're dead.
outsmarted them and have them trapped, and you're like, I could kill you now, but first let me gloat about my victory. Like, how satisfying
You're
could that
the
be?
guy. You're the poisoner from
Yeah,
Princess
not like
Bride.
mid combat.
From now on, whenever I'm about to finish a rear naked choke in jiu-jitsu, I'm just gonna start talking shit. You know I could end it right now, right? Your life is in my hands.
Yeah, you'll be like, I could have put the poison in your glass, but then you would think that I thought
40
dead.
I know there have been a few interviews I've watched with Robin Hobb. There's something that she's said multiple of them, and that's, you know, she starts out with a pretty basic story, and then she starts having Fitz make decisions, and then with every single one, the book just gets longer and longer and longer.
And she's like, "Why, you
spiraling.
idiot? Why did you do it?" Yeah,
Yeah, it's just writing. Like,
yeah. She
she's
actually
like, I
says
have
that.
outlines, but like I could still use all the outlines I have again, because if you saw the outlines, you'd be like, you never wrote those
That's not
books.
yeah. There is you know, one of the biggest moments in this book, and this kind of jumping towards a little bit ahead within Full Assassin, but you know, when Fool shows up finally, the reason B decides to help this elderly blind person cross the street, or like, you know, goes up to him, is because she wants to be brave like Fitz. And I think she's saying that within you know, within that chapter leading up to that moment, and then she goes to help him, and then that leads to Fool getting stabbed by Fitz accidentally,
Shanked.
and them going, you know, the rest of the story. Let me just say that entire sequence was ridiculous, because I was right before that. We also got the dog scene, which was one of the hardest.
Yeah.
Scenes. I remember commenting that in the Discord, and I was just like, that dog scene was brutal. That must have been one of the most like,
Yes, very hard to read.
Toughest, toughest animal scenes I've read in a long time, where I was just like cringing. And then Fitz has to like put the dog out of its misery just because of how it was brutal. But right after that, he stabs Fitz, and I just remember yelling, like almost yelling at my book, because I was just like, what the hell?
Which, by the way, I'm pretty sure that was the moment that inspired B to be like, I have to be courageous like Fitz. I don't think it was like some obscure example. I think she saw that as courageous, and
she was like, yeah, standing up for those who are weak. Yeah, like I'm going to be just like my dad. That was cool to witness. And it's funny because he was so mortified at the thought that she saw him like that, but she took the positive from it. She was like, wow, like my dad's so brave, and he'll stand up for those that are weaker than him. And then like my brain is like, really, Fitz, you went straight to shanking a guy. Like you didn't even investigate the situation at
like,
all.
Who are you?
When you get older, you don't have time.
Right. But in my mind, I'm like, he was just like, his adrenaline
not
was
monologuing.
probably, yeah, he just left a really stressful situation, and his adrenaline was probably like really at an all-time high, because he just like had to kill a dog and confront people and all this stuff. So maybe he just wasn't thinking clearly, but geez, the strength.
And also, it's like, that's my daughter, get away. If like, you know, he was there, he might have been like,
if it'd been like Shun.
Fitz doesn't monologue. This comes up in Assassin's Fate.
Yeah, Shun.
Kills a person, and he's like, the chicken was delicious.
Shun.
I stole their dinner. What a savage.
Yeah, let's talk about Lant and Shun in this book.
Yeah, Lance and Shun.
Wow.
I
was
honestly
like,
didn't
who
really like
are
either of them in
you?
Full Assassin.
No, you're not
Like,
supposed to.
Yeah, no, I wanted to.
They're bad.
Yeah.
Okay,
they're the
good, because I
worst.
did like either of them in this book. I don't think by the end of the trilogy, I think I liked Shun more than Lant. I don't know if I ever really liked Lant, but they just had a very
I came
interesting
around to
dynamic.
Lant. I came around to
Full
Lant.
Assassin.
But I never like truly like loved him. But I came around to Lant. Like I see what she was doing. But Shun,
Mhm.
like she never earned any respect from me personally.
I think I came around to both of them, but it took a bit.
They're definitely not in this book.
No, not in this.
No,
one.
no, this book, they were like the, you know,
They were the
Hobb
pick.
likes her hateable characters, and she's really good at them, and they were that for Fool's Assassin.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, you guys are gonna have to like remind me, and I'm drawing such a blank. But what is Nettle's husband's name?
I was just trying to remember that. Because
'Cause
there's the scene
he
where he
is-
gives Fitz the dagger, and Fitz is like, and he has the quote about it, and it's like, undeserved forgiveness, friendship defined, when he almost like gets him killed, and then he
somewhere.
forgives him. And I can't remember his name, but he's so cool.
I think he's like
Riddle.
the Riddle.
Riddle.
Yeah, Riddle.
Riddle is like the unsung hero of this whole trilogy. Like he's such a great guy
He's
and
awesome.
so
He
like
really is.
loyal and steadfast.
I like
He's like the
Perseverance,
Just
glue guy.
Riddle.
You know? He's not the MVP, but he's like the glue guy that makes it
Riddle.
work.
Big fan.
There's a couple moments where he keeps Fitz in check. He's just like, dude.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I also so Nettle I think is also really good in this year. And there's one part where Nettle is kind of like complaining about how much it sucks to be like in Buckkeep in the center of politics. I'm like, that's what Fitz was saying in Fool's Fate. See, he told you. And everyone like, this is dumb Fitz and vindication. But no one noticed that Fitz actually said that in Fool's Fate in the book. And I was like, Fitz, part of the reason you seem really stupid is no one ever notices when you were right in the long run.
That's a good point.
But he was. So get wrecked, everyone else. Get wrecked, Shade.
No, that's a great point because he's so hyper focused on not wanting Nettle to be a tool to be used as he was, and then that's essentially exactly what happens to her. And then she's just like, "Oh
when she's
damn!"
complaining about it, no one's like, "Oh yeah, Fitz, you warned me about this and wanted to avoid this."
You were
actually.
worried.
I would now like to acknowledge you may have had a point. No one says that.
All right.
They did my voice.
Okay, so before we go right into Fool's Quest, let's talk about the ending because I think the ending was particularly another brutal scene for Hobb with the kidnapping of B from Withywood's. And one, I was already frustrated that
Bye.
I was already frustrated that Fitz didn't bring B to Buck with him at that point because it was just like, of course something's gonna go wrong the second they separate. But
Maybe
the actual
I understand he was stressed, but like
let's split up.
leaving
This is a stressful situation.
her with Lance and Shun, I was like,
If he knew he was the protagonist of a fantasy novel,
right?
It's true.
then he would have made a
done it.
different decision.
I don't know about you guys, but anytime things are going bad, I'm always like, I want everyone that makes me feel better and safe to go away. And I really want to be alone with my
I'm
thoughts.
just like, let me ditch this human that depends on me. I'm gonna go elsewhere.
Like, I better go see what's going on up there. Buck.
We're usually not going to places where our chances of being stabbed directly increase, though.
That's
So
fair.
it's like,
Yeah.
But like,
don't
who's
do
gonna
that.
stab a child? I mean, that's probably a dumb question.
I mean, is that a serious question?
As soon as
What'd you guys think of,
I said it.
What do you guys think about the actual, them taking B? It's gone again. Revel dying, who I had grown to like at that point quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then Revel dies. A bunch of people die. It's like very brutal. They burn everything. They burn the barns. And I forget who we thought died. I think we thought Lant died, and then he's not dead. And we thought Perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
I forget who the one under the invisible cloak from Harry Potter is, but there's someone who's hiding. Like,
Get
that
an
is
original
Perseverance,
idea,
yeah.
Hobb.
Yeah. I dare
So
you.
also, we could ask Super Gainsborough now if he thinks this is a reasonable decision. So if you were going downtown where your chances of getting stabbed increase, do you take children with you?
Or do you ditch
Or do you
your
send them
children with
home?
irresponsible teens?
You send them home and get a baby.
Well, I've been
second-
downtown Portland. With,
Do you
with Super
monologue
Gainsborough.
before the child gets taken?
I have been downtown Portland with Super Gainsbros, and we in fact came to the homeless camp and we said, let's split up. And it's crazy how that works. We both went into different entrances to pals. It was wild. I
Are you comparing Super Gainsborough or yourself to B in this situation?
I would be B,
Okay,
mainly because I'm adorable.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That checks out.
All right, so
Madison's gone forever.
I know. I mean,
He's returned.
I think she's gone, but-
She who disconnects.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
I can
can't-
hear you.
I can't see.
I
you.
have
we
no
can't see
idea
you.
why it's not working. My camera's on, so I don't know. Well, that's weird. That's never happened before.
podcast mode.
Yeah, keep talking. Keep talking. Sorry.
Have you? Is there a chance you've just turned all the lights off and made the room you're in is black? And
Oh, maybe that's
Like
it.
The darkest room.
Madison was splitting up. She said, guys, I'll go. Don't worry.
Into the dark room on my own. Yeah, you guys all go as far away as possible. Yeah, with no way
I
of
have no
communicating with
idea.
me.
You guys take the weapon too. I don't need it.
I'm gonna, yeah.
I have a
I'll fix
flashlight. I'll be
what's
good.
going on in here. All right, I'm gonna try to leave and come back one more time, and then if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work.
Then we'll just go sound only. Whatever.
Yep.
Everyone, I'm just gonna lie. Everyone is just playing this in the background. No one's actually watching this. Like,
That's true. I always have these on audio only.
yeah, like
usually when I watch it.
obviously I'm saying it, but if I
Unless
just
I'm
did
watching
this
live,
and didn't
even
say
then.
anything, no one's gonna comment.
Oh,
like
I
Jake
don't.
did.
I watch everybody. I judge your bookshelves. I judge you. I'm always.
No, I
watching.
mean like the long chats.
No, dude,
Sometimes
I'm
I'll watch
here.
them, but sometimes I'll watch them on
Jimmy, I hate to tell you,
Jimmy's got his
chatting with
opera
Nuts plays in the
binoculars.
No, you gotta
Jim,
keep your
chatting with
secrets
Nuts plays
sealed,
in the
man.
background. I'm have something else going on at the same time. I'm not being like, let me see, identify every book in Jimmy's
Every
book.
time Jake's cat walks in, I know.
Like, did she walk in? No.
It worked.
Nice.
But there we
Just in time to talk about Fool's Quest.
Yes.
What do you guys think
I
about
think-
Fool's Quest?
I think this
is
is
it
my
your favorite?
second favorite. I think it's my second favorite.
Interesting.
And honestly, I should probably reassess that, because if I'm being honest with myself, there's just like one mountaintop moment that made the entire series like, oh yeah,
Yep. I know what
this
you're
is
talking
worth
about.
it. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me as a reader, and I just can't let go of it. So the rest of the book was probably pretty good, but that one moment to me makes the whole, like, it's so
You
good.
mean the part where Starling does the one cool thing she does in the entire series?
It makes her entire character worth it for sure. But
Yeah,
because-
that cool moment. It was like
When we find
like
out,
I'm like
Shun and
grudging respect. I'm like, okay, that was pretty cool.
really just Fitz being recognized in such a profound and beautiful way
Lance. Yes.
that wasn't just being recognized by royalty, but truly recognized for his sacrifice and his just like what he really contributed to how wonderful Buck, and all the six duchies are now, and how they, the potential that kingdom has now is literally thanks to him. And just that, it was a beautiful moment. And it just, to me, I was like, if the book ended right now, I think I could be pretty happy.
I think
But
it
it
makes it
didn't.
even better that while I'm reading that and feeling that
Be
triumph,
taken.
I'm also internally screaming because I know
Be-
he's been kidnapped, and if he knew that, he would have to like
Yes.
be panicking.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, the greatest triumphant moment, and actually like things are terrible and you just don't know it. Such a Hobb thing to do.
Did we get Night Eyes for the first time in Fool's Quest, or was it at the end of?
No,
Wolf
that
Father's
was
in-
actually, we didn't talk. the
Oh yeah,
first one.
Wolf Father is definitely in what do we call
But-
this book? Fool's Assassin, because when she was
Oh my
down
goodness.
in all the tunnels and stuff, that's when
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
So-
yeah.
Once upon a time, someone who has read Tawny Man and not Fitz and the Fool, I was like, well, the reason I like Fool's Errand more than Fool's Fate is because Fool's Errand has Night Eyes and Fool's Fate doesn't. So, and they were like, that means you have to like Fool's Errand more than Fitz and the Fool. And I just had to not respond, and it killed me. And it's still killing me on the inside that I had to just be like, I guess that's a valid point. And I couldn't be like, Wolf Father counts.
Wolf
Wolf Father does
And
One
I'm
of the
just waiting
coolest-
for them. They're stalling. They decide to read all bloody Malazan. And I'm waiting for them to read Fitz and the Fool so I can find that comment and be like, see?
See?
It wasn't valid.
They should just do what Alex and I did and read them both at the same time.
They're a lot slower than these two are.
Chaos is cool.
We're pro chaos.
I
here.
feel like they would temper each other really well though, because they're so different.
Yeah.
They are very different.
And
They're
I think
almost
we're pro
polar
chaos.
opposites in fantasy.
I think this stream is firmly chaotic good.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Maybe chaotic neutral. I don't know.
Yeah, but definitely chaotic. I'm more sure about the chaotic than I am about the good. So I feel weird
but
about
yes.
Fool's Quest. And this is why I feel weird about Fool's Quest. Because I read Fool's Quest, and after I read it, I was like, I feel like this is like one of the more like tightly plotted Realm of the Elderlings books. And now everyone else says the exact opposite about that and says that nothing's happened. And I'm like, wait, what's going
saw
on?
that
I'm
on
very
here,
confused.
But
I
that's
like it.
because people don't understand what they're saying.
Okay.
It drives me insane. You're right.
Yeah.
They're wrong.
Oh, fantastic. That's
Yeah.
great to hear. I have nothing else to add. You guys can talk about Fool's Quest now.
I mean, significantly more happens in this book than the first book.
I
Like,
agree.
Fool's Quest is definitely,
Absolutely.
there's more plot.
I feel like
Yeah.
it's
Especially
one
like
of the
the-
most eventful
after the
Fitz
first-
books.
I would agree
definitely
with that. I think
It's
has
very
more,
action packed as far as a Hobb.
yeah,
book
more
goes.
stuff
Red
happens.
Snow.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
And this
good.
is
I'm
where
glad I've been thinking I've been going. I was crazy for like 2 years, and I'm
like
glad
a
you're all here for
staunch-
me. Okay, I really
I'm a
appreciate
staunch Fool's Quest and Golden Fool defender because I think that there's
I'll
it just-
defend
I love
Golden
Golden Fool,
Fool
too.
any day.
all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Golden Fool is a fascinating book for multiple reasons, which this isn't Tawny Man, so I won't get into it. But Fool's Quest, to me, I always say it's the most underrated because of the Starling moment and what it meant to Fitz, but also to me. Like, it legitimately, like, I had this almost like weird experience. I don't want to call it an out-of-body experience because that's cliche. But, like, I just had this moment where I was like, wow, I have been so many different things to so many different people in my life. And to think about that, like outside of yourself, like it's not something like we can't get out of first person, perspective unless we start, I mean, there's DMT and stuff, but that say that's the weekend. But I don't know. Like sometimes you read something and it's very straightforward, very simple of what's happening. Some people even say it's fanfare, right? But it just gave me pause for a moment to think about that. And it was really impactful for me in a whole lot of ways. And then also the Chade stuff in here also made me think about my life. So I always talk about like Realm of the Elderlings, how impactful it was for me personally. And Fool's Quest happens to have a ton of those moments. So I like Fool's Quest a ton. Plus we get Motley, which Motley is dope. And I like the miscommunication by distance trope. It's not even miscommunication; it's just like not communication, I guess. I like that. So I was enjoying that anxiety for some reason the entire time. So I think Fool's Quest is very underrated.
And Fool's Quest is
it was the most
really,
anxious I felt.
And it's the book where you go, I know the legend has it that she originally was going to stop after Tawny Man, but you're sitting there like, no, like there's no way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were so many there were so many loose ends at the end of Tawny Man. I was like, how did she
There's
think
no
this
way.
was done?
So I'm very confused when I hear this because I have heard Robin Hobb say the opposite thing, which is that when I've seen other people say it, I feel like backwards of what Hobb said it, which is people say like when she read Farseer, she knew it wasn't the end, but then when she wrote Tawny Man, she thought it was. And on her podcast with Brian McClellan, she was on the Brian McClellan podcast, I'm fairly sure she says the exact opposite, which is that when she wrote Farseer, she didn't know if she was going to continue, but when she wrote Tawny Man, she was like, no, there's more that we have here.
That would make more sense to me. But also, honestly, even like I know we're talking about this trilogy, but even when I got to Rain Wilds, I was like, this makes Assassin's Quest make so much more sense.
Yep.
Like the whole section where he's on the skill road, while you're reading it, you're just like, if you say so, don't know what any of this means, no context here. But after you read Rain Wilds, you go back to Assassin's Quest and go, oh, that all makes perfect sense now. So I'm like, all of these books needed to be there. Like I will always agree that I think Rain Wilds could have been edited differently and formatted a little differently, but it needed to be there because that's where we're getting all of our world building and lore and questions answered about the magic. So
Rain Wilds, I think even people who don't like Rain Wilds as much, I think and also like usually say like it's not skippable really. Like it's got a lot of important stuff.
Definitely not.
Like it's got
Definitely.
really important
No.
stuff, even if which is actually almost, I think for the people who don't like it as much, almost like more frustrating because if it was skippable, it'd be like just don't read it.
It's
But
like
if you
Return of
don't
the
like it
Crimson
and
Guard.
it's not skippable, then it's like, well, damn.
Yeah, that the last trilogy won't make sense. I actually
Yeah.
know, not to change the topic, I know Tori from Tori Talks. I think Jimmy, you had her on Chatting with Nuts this past week. She didn't know that there were a bunch of trilogies in between Farseer and Fitz and the Fool. I went from Assassin's Quest to the Fitz and the Fool trilogy.
Apparently,
And successfully
Wait,
read them
she
all.
did that? She read it like that?
She only read the
She hasn't
first
read
one.
the other. She hasn't read the other three series yet.
yeah,
Tawny
she
Man
read
live shipping.
she read Farseer,
Jimmy's like, and she didn't tell me this?
she read Farseer and then Fool's Assassin.
Yeah.
Fool's Assassin.
So I have something even
How
more
did
cursed.
anything make sense?
I have something even more cursed. This was a comment someone posted on Discord, and it's about the Tales
Oh,
of
I
Book
know.
Talk. Apparently, Book Talk for a little bit, Rain Wilds only blew up on Book Talk, and a bunch of people were like, "Can I skip the first 9 to read Rain Wilds?"
What?
I mean, I guess.
Like, please,
but
please stop. Just we all need to get Scott over here, bald booktuber, to just tell everyone publication order always. It's sage advice that really should be listened to.
You almost
and
wish
I
the
saw
books
that
were numbered
today, and I was like, book talk. Truly, someone could have convinced me. Oh, it actually is causing people to read more. I'm like, no, it's evil. It's bad, and I'm against it. It's not great here.
So, with Fool's Quest, we have two major plot lines going on. We have Fitz and the Fool, who is now back in the story as he's recovering and getting fed the skill almost that we find out. And we also have B and, her with Dwalia and Vindalire and the Chalcidian mercenaries who actually, it took me a little bit, but about halfway through this book, I realized, oh, that's the same Chalcidian guy that was sending the letters in Rainwild Chronicles the entire series.
It took me too long.
Dumb names.
I would have never gotten it. Alex told me.
Like Eric or Elric or something. I was just like, I know this name because I remember reading it every chapter.
And honestly, I have no excuse because I read all of Rainwilds and then all of Fitz and the Fool almost straight through, like a couple books sprinkled in, but pretty much straight through. So I had no excuse for not making that connection. But I was
names are hard. That's
I was like halfway through Fool's Quest, and I was just like,
fantasy.
I was like the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme. I was like, I know that guy.
I missed
it.
Okay,
you know what, Matt? Names are hard. Okay.
I only audio.
I'm trying my best.
I did the audio for Rainwilds, and then I read Fitz and the Fool physically. So
the audio for Rainwilds.
Names just do not. I did audio for Rainwilds and Live Ship, so I got Anne Flosnick or however you say her name for all of it.
I audio
your
only,
best friend.
So I get you. I audio only. So. Anne Flosnick is, I'll always say that I do believe she's good at what she does. Like, she's very talented. Like, she does her voices, she does the inflection, she puts the right, like, emotions and stuff in it. But the sound of her voice just doesn't, doesn't like
I
it.
didn't mind the Live Ship audiobooks, but the Rainwild ones I did.
She was better in Rainwilds. I will agree on that for sure. But she's proficient, so
I just remembered a random part where I was yelling at Fitz for being dumb, and I'd like to randomly bring it up because we're not doing that enough.
Please.
Which
That's
is
what we're
when
here for.
I remembered when he was healing the Fool, and the Fool's like foot was all messed up, and the next day like his foot got hurt, and he was like, it must be the shoes. I'm like, no, Fitz. When you heal him, it's hurting you. And at that point, I was like, is he gonna die at the end of this trilogy by overhealing the Fool? Is that what's happening? Which isn't how it ended up, but I was like, Fitz, this is obvious. Like, come on. You can figure this out.
I will say that having to listen to, read about, visualize, think about the Fool being tortured and hurt is, I mean, this is the same in Tawny Man, but like, I will throw up if I start to think about it enough because I think that the Fool is perfect and anybody that would hurt him is horrible, and I'm so glad that they got to die a horrible death as well because that is like my baby and I just can't handle it. Like I think about the Fool being tortured and I can make myself cry right now if I wanted to.
I know some people who don't like the final trilogy as much. One of the reasons why is they just thought it was like overly mean to the Fool. And when I say I like enjoyed reading it, obviously like I mean like it was painful, but I thought seeing the Fool be like more vulnerable and not in control was a really like fascinating, different look for him compared to most of what we'd seen.
Right.
Yeah.
Except for like the very end of Tawny Man, because normally he kind of like is way more in control of himself than Fitz.
He's always a few steps ahead.
And,
he knows more than he says. But
and I thought it was
he's helpless.
Really interesting to have that dynamic somewhat reverse as Fitz finally plans ahead and is starting to like actually have control of himself and not just be like, I shall rush out and hope things turn out, and then they don't.
It just took him 50 years. Man.
Yeah, it only took him 50 years. And just like it took him 50 years to learn how to get into like Chade's little place, and he was like, it's been half a century, and Chade was like, what are you talking about? No, it hasn't. He's like, yeah, I was like this old, and now I was 12, and now I'm 62. And Chade was like, wait, am I 120? What's going on? But I really thought it might be the trilogy where I found the Fool's character the most interesting. I don't know. He was brilliant in all of them, but I think it was extraordinarily
He was
well-done aspect of this trilogy.
definitely the most
Especially
vulnerable
Fool's Quest.
in this trilogy. Yeah.
Especially Fool's Quest.
Yeah. So, like, the middle chunk of this book, after Fitz realizes that B is taken, he freaks out, tries to find her. At the same time, in B's point of view, we see them escape through the skill stone, and then he tries to find her, realizes that B might be lost in skill stone, is probably lost in skill stone, and as a result of that, pretty shortly after, Dutiful revokes his title of assassin, and he kind of just, hey, live your life here in Buck as Fitz. And I thought this part was both frustrating, but also kind of heartbreaking, because I was just like, this one thing that Fitz thought he wanted his entire life for, all of these books leading up to this. Since the moment he was 6 years old and introduced to us, he always wanted to, he never really wanted, or at least he said he did. He never thought he wanted to be an assassin. He wanted to just be a respected part of this family in Buck and like live his life. And now he finally has it. And even though on face value, surface value, he is kind of flirting with it a little bit, that that's not what he's meant to be. And then it's not until Chade, I believe, is the one who tells him, like, Fitz, this is not what you should be doing right now. This is not the Fitz I know. This is not the Fitz that you shouldn't be here, or why are you here? And I just remember that entire sequence just being incredibly just hit hard for me, both on an emotional level, but also the entire time I was just like, get out, leave Buck. I love Buck, but like, get the hell out of here and go.
You gotta go, man.
Find B.
You gotta go. Yeah. Shoot, that's something I was gonna say. Yeah,
Chade also does give him props for preparing, though. At some point, he's like, sharpening your knife is never a waste of time. Like, actually, like, not just going. There's actually a really, really, really good quote from this book. This book has a lot of really good quotes. Like, if you look at the Goodreads quotes, like all the books do, but I feel like the Fool's Quest section of Goodreads quotes are actually like particularly good.
Chade has a ton in this one.
And one of them is, I'm gonna slightly misquote it, but he's like, acting like more recklessly. I'm just gonna find it and get it right. 1 second.
Your memory is incredibly impressive to me, because I just read this and I couldn't tell you a single quote.
I'm cheating for quotes in that I sometimes have dramatic readings, and so I remember all the ones I did for those anyway. But this is actually one I didn't do for that, and I just remember because I referenced it to make fun of an assassin in Emperor's Blades when I was like, you should learn from this. Where is this?
Matt.
I failed. It's just like acting more like patiently is not less a sign, like making like a powerful and careful response is not less a sign of your like love for the person than just like lashing out in anger.
Yeah.
And that is advice that really a lot of fantasy protagonists should please listen to.
Also, just a lot of people.
People in general. Like,
well, it's funny though, is most fantasy protagonists are under the age of 20. So it makes sense that he's just now really starting to wrap his head around this concept of it's better to plan and get her back the right way than to just rush in. But like, he's old now. It took a lifetime for him to learn that.
Thanks. Thank you. This is the quote. Yeah, doing something stupid and reckless is not better proof of your love than doing something measured and powerful.
Good.
And also, it's a lot of the time, like, I see people say, like, not making a decision is itself a decision. And I feel like a lot of the time, both in books and in real life, not making a decision and preparing is the correct decision. And it's a decision people find very hard to make. Like, it's very hard to be like, something needs to get done. And the correct thing to do right now is to, like, prepare or do, like, nothing. And Chade rightly points out that a lot of the time, like, any action, all of them are destructive. Like, you need to be patient right now. And it's something that took Fitz, 15 books to figure out. He wasn't in some of those, so really it only took him 8 in his defense.
He was still figuring it out, just off screen.
But that's true. Anyway, I love that line. Fool's Quest is gasoline.
I do have sometimes a hard time remembering what happened in Fool's Quest and then what happened in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I did too.
I read them back to back.
Yeah, we did.
I did as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna lie, if I'd been waiting, that cliffhanger would have pissed me off. Like, I would have given a lower score if I had to wait for Assassin's Fate Because that cliffhanger would have pissed me off, and I would have been like, "No, we're dropping you a half star just for that."
Yeah.
But
I don't even remember where it ends. I really don't remember where it ends. Tell me.
It
ends when
the last
he
chapter is like
meets
he comes through the portal
people.
and starts like,
yeah.
Red Rising fans were really funny because they thought that I was reading both at the same time, and they thought that after Fool's Quest, I would go read Golden Sun, and then after Golden Sun, they'd be like, "No, I have to read Morningstar now. I'll delay Assassin's Fate," and I was like, "Yeah, that's hilarious."
Good choice, Jake.
I was like,
incomparable.
No, like I know I haven't read Golden Sun, but the chance of that happening is 0%. And in reality, I read Assassin's Fate before Golden Sun because. Like I wasn't gonna not read Assassin's Fate. Yeah,
you're all right, Jake. You're all right.
You just Jimmy's like, you know what, that Jake guy,
not so bad.
He's all right. But I will say that. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go. I was just
gonna say that I was hoping for a little more payoff with the Thymara plot line because. It was my biggest struggle throughout the entire Rain Wilds. And I was like, honestly, what's frustrating is that if you took her out of it, it would still be the same story. And then when she kind of came back alone and looped into this book or the next book, wherever, kind of they can need their kid healed. I'm like, still didn't really need her in that Rain Wilds. So that frustrated me. But again, I'm just like, it's still
is that full
not it's still not nearly as dramatically bad as people make it out to be, but that storyline is such a waste of pages in my opinion. But
some people make a version of the last two A Song of Ice and Fire books that have come out where it's all one book. Someone needs to make a Rain Wilds version where they just cut out everything Thymara and just be like, here you go.
Yeah, cut out the love triangle thing.
Get on it, Jake.
I'll work on it.
Do it.
I'll have it done in a good 12 years, okay?
I'll read it.
By 2040 for sure.
We also find out that the Fool's actual name is Beloved in this in Fool's Quest, which was pretty cool. And we find out some family ties with Chade and Lant and Shun, and also to remove the skill block that's on Chade's daughter. He says my beloved daughter, and then that's the key that finally removes the skill block from her, which I thought was pretty cool.
I have no memory of this, but I read it a while ago.
Oh yeah. Sure but she couldn't use the skill, and he couldn't. He had blocked his daughter from the skill, and then the only way to lift it was by saying
because her adoptive family or her mom or whatever, they were all mean. They're bullies.
Classic Hobb.
I'm trying to remember something because there's a thing I'm
Terrible
thinking, and I'm trying to justify it, and I can't remember why. And I'm going to see if you guys can fill this in. Because one criticism I have seen of Rain Wilds and Tawny Man is that Rain Wilds, because they save those dragons, makes the end of Tawny Man, where they save the dragons, kind of pointless. And I remember thinking at the start of Assassin's Fate that the events of Tawny Man happening with Fitz and the Fool specifically saving the dragon and Tintalia was a primary reason that will end up leading to the Six Duchies and Kelsingra being allies. And if that hadn't happened, then they would have probably ended up being enemies and killed each other. And it could have very easily spiraled into a long war over a long time. And I remember being I wonder if that's actually the reason that had to happen, to make it so to avoid a war that could have happened for a long time. But I can't remember why the end of Tawny Man would lead to that. And I'm wondering if any of you can, or if I have to just go reread it and either realize I'm wrong or realize why I'm right. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
I'm going to go with that sounds great. And also I feel a white prophet can only see so much. He's just making the best choices he can with the information he has. He's somewhat unaware, even though he laid the groundwork with Live Ship, he still doesn't really know what's become of all that because he can only be one place at a time. So I just kind of took it as he's just doing as much as he can do to make sure this objective comes to fruition.
And I'm wondering if the reason it was actually important, because he didn't know why bringing the dragons back was important. And I'm wondering if maybe the important part was actually that Fitz and him were directly involved, because I think they got some knowledge from it, and that led to him being able to heal someone in Kelsingra, which led to people not dying, which led to their not killing each other.
Wasn't Procop also there, where he was with Icefire or whatever? That's where they ran into him.
Yeah.
I remember thinking this, but I can't remember why I thought this, okay?
Is Matt still in the comments? He knows. He remembers everything.
Can we get Darian here? You
He
sleeping,
explains
Darian?
it back.
Wake
This is
Dairy
what I
up.
was gonna say. Icefire
Yes.
is also the one who leads the charge on Claris because only he
That's
remembers.
right. He was frozen in ice that whole time, so he still has the memories of what happened to the dragons and the Elderlings by those terrible people at Claris.
And also all the normal people who just live there and who died and horribly, but
Guilty
also the
by
terrible.
association.
Yeah. Collateral damage.
I'm sure there's not a quote about how that's going to end badly in the long run from Assassin's Fate, from B's perspective. We're not going to worry about it. Nothing could possibly.
We can
go
move
wrong.
into We can move to Assassin's Fate if you want, to be honest, because like this is where I'm starting to get blurred about like where
It's all a
Fool's Quest
blur.
ends. I know. I believe he saves Thymara's kid, and Ephraim.
I think I've already
who
talked
is
about Assassin's
Malta's
Fate
kid?
without permission, and you were just kind enough to not banish me from your channel.
Yeah.
Which was
I
nice
think
of
Jordan
you.
brought up Assassin's Fate like pretty early on in the stream.
Jeez, Jordan.
I definitely did. I
Yeah.
brought it up like at the
Unacceptable.
beginning.
I have no control. I've been waiting
So yeah,
on to talk
Assassin's
about
Fate.
Ketrican until we get to Assassin's Fate.
Oh, I love her so
Talk about
much.
Ketrican.
Because
Talk about
I
Ketrican.
can't. Ketrican is maybe one of my favorite characters in all of fiction. I think she's just as perfect as a character can be written because she's everything. Like she's flawed, but just in the right amount to make her relatable and human. But she's just perfect, and I love her. But again, I'm not trying to get way ahead of myself. But the whole final act and her role in that, I don't know what I was expecting from Hobb and from all these relationships, but what I was delivered rocked my world. Like,
I'm gonna start crying.
I'm
thinking
gonna
about
start.
it.
I mean, if you want to talk about it in a little more of a linear way, so we can get to that when it comes. But just that whole final act, I don't know what I was expecting.
Chapter
but
48, I think is the.
It wasn't
wrecked
that.
me.
Yeah, I was not expecting
The
that.
line she said, "You never did." He says, "I didn't notice you there. I didn't see you there." And she says,
You never
"You
did.
Oh,
Night Eyes knows. Night Eyes knows that.
Night
Ketrican
Eyes
is best.
knows. Anyway,
That was a
let's talk about the
dagger.
rest
That
of
entire
the book
chapter was
because,
brutal.
whew,
That's the only book I've ever had like tears drop on the page. Like
That's what that was the
legitimate.
first book that made me cry for a while.
Yeah.
I
haven't
messaged Jordan that I was like,
Unrelatable.
I found
Since-
it. The first book that's made me actually tear up.
Because I knew, I was like, if Alex doesn't cry at the end of this one, he's not human. Because
let me tell you guys a quick story. So when I was reading this, we were leaving the next day for a road trip to see family in Ohio, and we were carpooling with Matt's parents, and so we're gonna have like a full vehicle. And I had like 120 pages left of Assassin's Fate, and I was like, well, I'm gonna save this and listen to it in the car. on the way to Ohio. But luckily, I stayed up till like 1 o'clock in the morning and finished it. And I had cried so much that my eyes were swollen the next day.
Oh, mine were like swollen shut.
And my mother-in-law was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No." And I'm like, I am so glad I did not read the end of that book, because I wasn't just crying. Like I was like,
Oh yeah, I couldn't breathe. My husband came like rushing in. He was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "This
No."
book." And he was like, "Oh, never mind." And he's like,
So I mean, because I tear up a lot in books, like just where you have to kind of like dab the eyes, or maybe you'll get a little tight in the throat. But when I say I was crying, like I think I was really just getting out maybe like 2 years worth of emotions that I have bottled up or something, because it was next level.
There are definitely
So, yeah.
degrees of crying when it's like
this
when you're
was-
reading a book.
Yeah, for sure.
I actually,
was-
funny
I'm not
myself,
reading.
I had something
I was
similar
weeping.
happen.
I
Yeah.
legitimately wept.
Yeah, same. So Madison, I actually had something kind of similar happen, which is I was on vacation and
Not a
and I-
vacation book.
and I was reading Assassin's Fate, and we got to the first like Fitz fake out death where like everyone leaves him, And then like dinner was ready, and I had to go down and like eat dinner with the family. And
Oh,
they were like,
no.
"Are you
That's
okay?"
just-
And I was like, "No."
Jake, that was literally the same thing happened to me. I read that chapter. I was like, holy shit. And then I had to go to like a family dinner or something and didn't get to read the next 2 chapters.
You're sitting
until
there
Yeah, I
like
don't
the
think I
next
talked
day.
to anyone at that. I was just like,
You're like that meme. Of
I was
Stewie
so
when he's
convinced
just
he
like
was
rocking
dead.
himself.
yeah.
I thought he was
to be
dead too.
honest, this makes sense. I was like, I convinced myself that it makes sense because I was like, this is a very Hobb thing to do in a
Mhm.
very realistic way for him to go out. So I was like, okay.
And I just
Oh
thought
yeah,
they're gonna.
I forgot.
thought they
was
would-
That was him like
pissed.
using the skill to like give the fool energy, which earlier in Fool's Quest, I thought that's how he was gonna die. I thought he was gonna heal the fool, and that was gonna cause him to get the injuries. And so I was like, holy crap, that's how he's dying. And so I was so convinced as well.
I was
I know.
pissed.
And
I was
like,
mad.
I was real
was
mad.
mad.
I was like, if this is it, like that is the most anticlimactic ending. And I was like, I didn't cry, and I was like, I know this isn't it. I was like, he's not dead.
Yeah.
He's not dead.
Well, there was like another 250 pages left of that book, I think, when that happened. And I was
Yeah.
like,
yeah, that's
a
why
B.
I was like, there's no way this
Yeah.
is the end.
I really thought B was going to tell the rest of the story. And I was just like, this is so unsatisfying. It's so disappointing. It's like, I believe it. If that's what it is, then I'll take it. But I was so disappointed. But then luckily, it was fake.
And we got some of my
I
favorite
know.
B chapters when the B thick friendship is so wholesome.
Oh, it's so
Mhm.
good.
Yeah.
So good.
I like how we just skipped like 3/4 of Assassin's Fate. That's a
Yeah.
480,000 word book, folks.
well,
I
we'll go back.
really
We'll go
found-
back.
Yeah, I found the beginning of the reason I think the first book is my favorite is because the first like 30 to 40% of Assassin's Fate I was really frustrated by because I felt like it was moving really slowly for how high the stakes were. And I don't know if it's because I went right into it after reading Fool's Quest, but I was so frustrated. I was like, this book is starting too slow, and like this is everyone's favorite. And then by like the 50% point, I had forgotten my complaints. But the beginning was slow for me. It was rough.
I don't
George,
remember.
did you
that.
like the? Yeah, I only remember when they. I mean, I remember it, but when we start getting all the live ship traders characters into the story,
Yeah.
we meet like Tennyson and
Yeah.
go to.
I felt like we were
like, this
in
is really cool,
Kelsingra
but
for too long.
stakes are
I was
high.
like, leave. I was like, get out of. They were in Kelsingra for too long.
Kelsingra.
Also, I would
Um,
now like to bring up that Robin Hobb in Fool's Quest addresses some people's criticism of Assassin's Fate accidentally, which is that some people are like, no, the live ship story ended and it ended well, and now more stuff is going to happen to them because life isn't all happily ever after the end of the story you got, and now more conflict's going to come. And meanwhile, I got Hobb in Fool's Quest with I found myself speaking softly as if I were telling an old tale to a young child and giving it a happy ending when all know that tales never end and happy ending is just a moment to catch one's breath before the next disaster. What
That
did
line-
people expect?
Yeah. I remember that line. Just being
Banger.
like,
Jake
Yeah.
with the receipts. It's awesome.
Yeah, Hobb really addressed this criticism. Like, I know obviously you can still not like it, but one of the repeated themes of this trilogy is that there aren't actual endings are stopping.
It's always going to be worse.
It's not always going to be worse, but
Yeah.
conflict doesn't end. Just because you reach a happy point, you're not going
Life
to
will
just
continually
stay at the happy point forever. That's not a thing.
time is a wheel. No.
Oh my god.
When it's like,
Where's the lead
yeah,
studio?
I mean, Assassin's Fate, it's just like there was the happy ending for the live ship characters, and now more conflict's going to happen. I'm like, one, it wasn't a very happy ending for the live ships who were stuck as boats, and one
Yeah.
of whom was insane.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. That was like a main theme of that
um,
trilogy, and yet they're still
and-
boats.
And two, that's not how life or Robin Hobb books work. What did you expect?
Man, explaining to
Facts.
people what the Live Ship Traders trilogy is about sounds so stupid.
You just gotta say family drama.
It
Honestly,
really
it's
is.
family drama.
Yeah.
You know
It
what?
is
I
one of
lean
those-
into it, and I'm like, the boats have psychological depth. That's my tagline.
it's
Boats are
I
more
left this
human
book
than the
loving
humans.
boats.
Yeah.
What's
I'm like,
cool
these
about
boats, they're sentient boats, and they're better written than most human characters. 98%. I don't mean most 51%. I mean almost all.
Almost all.
And it's
Read
it's
9
kind of a
books,
hard
9 of
sell
them are-
on the surface level, what was amazing to me is that it really only took like 2 chapters for me to be like, oh, never mind,
Yeah,
it's cool
I
as
agree.
hell.
Yeah, I'm into it.
First conversation with Vivacia, I was just like,
I'm
all right.
honestly, I'm not gonna lie. Ship, I thought the boats was cool before I started. I read Ship of Magic might be the last book I read the back cover of before I read, because then I decided they're evil and they spoil things.
I agree.
But when I read the back of Ship of Magic, I was like, that sounds sick. And then the Golden Fool happened, and now I don't read back covers of books anymore. I've not read the back cover of a book for 2 years.
I really try not. Yeah,
I really don't either.
I
really
don't.
don't. I like to go in
just
pretty
scared out of it.
Anyway, the live ship stuff is great. And Fitz saying he doesn't like Amber was hilarious.
I loved it.
And the fool thought it was as funny as I thought it was, which I really appreciated.
Their tension is always so believable, because if you've ever had a best friend or just someone who you're so intimately bonded, like, I don't love the term soulmate in real life, but in this context, I think this is the best example of soulmates I've ever seen. And if you've ever had somebody that you're that close with, like, their tension is so believable to me. Like the way that they love each other unconditionally, but like they don't always like each other. And it's such a, like, their relationship is one of the most interesting dynamics I've ever read in all of fiction.
And also, this is something Jimmy talked about earlier. It's a great example of the series of, like, the version of people you know is not the same person that other people know when they know that person. Like,
So good.
You guys know me, but the me you see is not the same me that, like, my parents know. And it's not because I'm being, like, fake to one of you. It's just that, like, when you know people in different ways, you come across slightly differently.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that Fitz has to battle with this, because he's like, who's the real fool? It's like, they're all the real fool, Fitz. Like, you never know someone completely. You know them in one facet, and you're going to just have to deal with that. Get good, I guess.
Yeah. Get better at being a person. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, he's not as good at being a person because he's not a real person. So I'm better at being a real person than him. But of all the not real people, he's better at being a real people than, like, almost all of them. So he's got that in his favor.
That's true.
Yeah. This is kind of jumping around again.
So good. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna bring
Say
it to
something,
B
Alex.
because she has, like, a pretty big plot going on here before she even gets to Claire. They take up with Trader Akerol, I believe her name was, and, like, life seems good and stuff.
That,
and
yeah.
Trader Akerol.
Vindelier is, like, using his power to convince the person that Dwalia is beautiful, and so they sleep together and they're, like, all living in this village, and then all of a sudden they all find out, and Dwalia slaughters. It was like, I remember the scene being, like, way more than just, she killed Trader Akerol. She just straight up slaughtered her.
Poor Trader Akerol, man.
I know, just, like, brought in, like, made B happy, and then all of a sudden,
I remember that really having an effect on me, like, feeling it. Like, I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Like,
that was no good deed goes unpunished, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Trader Akerol might have acted differently if she knew this was in a book.
Probably.
That's true.
Probably.
This
Somebody
is
should have told her.
Yeah, someone should have been like, I just want to warn you, B's one of the
overall
protagonists
theme
a
of Realm
book.
of the Elderlings.
Yeah.
You guys are part of a book.
Yeah, and it's a book with an author who's mean. So
yeah, you might want to steer clear of the
like,
path of
this
your
isn't one of those
protagonist.
books where it's like, oh, you're a named character, you have plot armor now. No.
Negative.
Like, the epigraphs
And
and
then,
Assassin's
B
Apprentice
did the
is,
little
like,
thing
Fitz
where
being
she
like,
becomes the destroyer.
this is when I realized I was in a book. Massive, what were you gonna bring up?
Well, I was gonna. At Fitz's. When does he get shot with the parasitic dart? Is that like that's
He gets
during
shot
the same
in
time
the
as
final
fake out
mission, and then he has the fake out death, and then when he's
Okay.
running around,
That's
he is
okay.
like, "Oh
When
no,
they're
I have
in,
worms,"
there's-
and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh no, it's the traitor's death." Crap, 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 crap.
So when for some reason, like, it took me a
Brutal.
while to, like, make all the connections about the dart and the parasites, and it's the same as the messenger. Like, it took me a while to do that. And when he eats a raw chicken, and then he starts getting parasites, I'm like, if he gets killed by salmonella, like I'm throwing this book across the room because he's like, I'm still a wolf in my mind. Like, oh, let's eat this raw bird. I'm like, what are you doing? But then, and then it just hit me. I was like, oh, the dark, the parasites. Like, okay.
That would have been.
I was like,
I would have not been surprised.
He did not get taken out by some bad chicken.
But speaking of a long con, and by the way, first I have a question. I know some of you finished it really recently, but for Jimmy and Madison, have you told anyone in real life, never do what you cannot undo until you've considered what you cannot do once you've done it?
No, because I can't say that because I get confused halfway and then I feel dumb.
Yeah, I will say that that's a quote that I've looked up several times because I'm like, my brain gets it, but my mouth is like,
okay,
do the things you want to do, or they'll
the
be
long
done.
con for that quote is
Yes.
fucking brilliant because in Assassin's Apprentice, Regal says it, and Fitz is like, okay, but Shrewd says this to Regal. And then 15 books later, he's like to the fool, yeah, there was this thing Regal said, never do what you cannot undo until you've considered what you cannot do once you've done it. And then we see at Clary's, it's like a common expression, and the fool is the one who told Shrewd, and we realized that Fitz just quoted him, the fool, at the fool without knowing it, and it was funny. And you guys got us to just say never do what you cannot undo until you've considered what you cannot do once you've done it to people in real life. It's hilarious. They're just like, wait, what?
Well, because at first it just sounds like a be careful with your choices because they have consequences, but that's not the message. The message is think about all the pathways you can't take once you've made a decision.
Yeah, if you're going to do something that can't be undone, think about how that will restrict your future action.
Everything else.
Yeah.
And it's pretty profound. And it is something that I've thought about like 100 times since then, because she has monumental messages, like important, heavy stuff, but there's also just the way she puts a sentence together is so perfect that sometimes you have to read it 2 or 3 times, not to understand it, but to truly appreciate the way she crafts a sentence. I mean, Jake has said this before about how Lives of Traitors is his favorite collection of words. And it's just the best way to say it, because I read a sentence and I'm just like, it's not that her prose is so, she's not using, $10 words. It's simple, but it's so perfectly crafted that it makes it impactful.
John Williams is very similar to this in literary fiction. He was considered journeyman prose at the time and was kind of ridiculed and written off. And then decades later, unfortunately, after he was dead, Stoner became a massive hit in literary fiction, and it had like a resurgence. And he just has such an elegant way of stating things without having to, go too deep in his dictionary or thesaurus or anything. So to me, like, that's perfect writing. Like, if you can say something profound in a manner which the masses can understand, I mean, that is always the goal, right? Without making it seem plain and vanilla. And I never felt that way at any point in this trilogy or any of the other series in Realm of the Elderlings that I was, reading something that I wasn't a part of. And just little ways, I always said that she found the perfect way of saying something, just the perfect way of putting those words together. And for me, still to this day, I think she's, top 2, top 3 writers in fantasy. And as far as perspective writer, and this is clear whenever you read B, I think she is the best perspective writer of all time. I really mean that. And I'm not just me. There's a whole lot of authors that say that. Steven Erikson said that when he does writing seminars, he actually uses Assassin's Apprentice as a way of explaining how to perfectly do a perspective. And I think that even becomes more obvious when you jump out and you're in B's head and you see Fitz, because you're like, oh, like Fitz has no confidence. Like, she thinks the world of, you know what I mean? So you're seeing it like a total different thing. And it's just a testament to how strongly she's able to write in perspective. And that's one thing I get kind of annoyed about. Like, when people don't like the series, that's fine. But to not be able to acknowledge the craft is it's frustrating to me. But I know most people don't read like that. But you got to be able to give it up for what the book does do well. And I would argue with anyone, any time of day, that she's a master with perspective.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to argue with that, Jimmy. I know it's shocking.
Yeah,
You better not.
I know you were expecting a lot of pushback, and for me to really fight you about that,
How brave of me.
I'm
How
actually in
brave of me
complete
to say
agreement.
this in the final trilogy spoiler discussion.
I was
Yeah,
saying,
I
I'm not
actually have
always a
thought
yes
she's bad this
man.
entire time. I've just been lying.
This is a good echo chamber for that, though, because I don't think you're going to find a lot of argument from any of us.
Go team echo chamber. Yes.
Well, and what's amazing to me is I was telling this to Derry, is with this series you get 3 different experiences. You get the experience of reading it for the first time, in the story unfolding as the author intended for it to be delivered to a reader, and you get the information as it's designed to be delivered to you. And then you get your second experience, is where we're all at right now, is being able to stand above it and look at it as a whole. And like, that's a whole different experience, reminiscing and remembering and appreciating it versus reading it. But the third is working your way through a reread, because since it's all from Fitz's perspective, the first time you're reading it, you're reading it through the eyes of Fitz and going, oh, this is why he did this. And this is why he feels this way. And if someone said that to me, I would do that too. But the second time, so I've only reread Farseer. Like, I'm still at my beginning of my reread. But just reading Farseer again, having the perspective of the whole story, you're able to see Fitz's story, his perspective, you're able to see the story from Burrick's perspective, from Verity's perspective, from Patient's perspective, from Molly's perspective, so differently, because you're not so caught in his mind, because you already know what's coming. So you're kind of able to view it from the lens of everyone around him. And it's so profound. It's so different. And I know everything, when you reread it, you get more out of it and you pick up on things, but that's not really what I'm talking about. It's almost like an entirely different experience, because what Fitz experiences at the end of Assassin's Fate is such a mirror to Verity's experience as well.
Yeah.
That I was just shaking in my boots reading Assassin's Quest the second time, because I am an Assassin's Quest lover. And like, I know it's kind of controversial. It's my favorite Farseer book. I love it. But reading it again after reading Assassin's Fate was just, it's such a masterpiece, you guys. It's so hand in hand, but not, it never felt like it was like I did this once before at the beginning. How cool would it be if I did it again at the end?
Yeah.
No, it's not like that. But man, you appreciate what Verity went through so much more after, because when Verity's carving his dragon, you only get it from Fitz's perspective. Yeah. And he gets it, but he's hurt. He's confused. He's lonely. He's caught up thinking about Nettle and Molly. Like, you're getting it from his perspective. But when you understand everything that goes into carving a dragon, and you're getting the POV of the person who's doing it, and you are seeing what it's taking out of them and how it's affecting how they see their loved ones, holy crap. It makes the end of Assassin's Quest so much better. So go read Farseer.
I'm with you. I'm with you that
I'm
Assassin's
so
Quest is my favorite. Assassin's Quest
It's not my favorite, but they're all really good. Yeah, it's
sorry,
that
was like a long spiel, but
no,
a lot of people when
was
they first read
that
AQ,
was awesome.
they're like, Verity's being kind of a dick, and then you read the end of Assassin's Fate, and you're like, okay, yeah, no.
Yeah. Well, and also I love how I'll shut up here in a second, but I love how slowly they roll out the idea that this is forging. Like, all the people from Forge that were forged, they had their essence poured into a dragon, and that's what's affecting, Verity at the time, and that's what affects Fitz, some in Tawny Man, and then he gets it back, and then he pours it all into his wolf. And it just, the way she slow rolls information, and so that at the end you're like, oh, all this behavior makes sense now, like all these little things. Like, I love that she doesn't just give it to you all right when you want it. Like, she makes you work for it, but you will get all of your questions answered. And I think that's just so cool.
That was very well said. I agree completely.
I agree.
I think let's just talk about the end of Assassin's Fate, because when everyone finds Fitz covered in silver, carving his wolf, I was just like, oh God, here we go.
I'm already tearing up.
I know.
He gets to be OP for like a chapter. He was so useless.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. Yeah.
And he gets to be OP
so
for one
OP.
chapter and just be like, die. And then it's like, do you get to be OP? No. Rip OP Fitz. We hardly knew he. It's so good. It's my favorite chapter, not in the series. Like
That
generally.
entire chapter.
So if I say Live Ship is my favorite 800,000 word collection, the penultimate chapter of Assassin's Fate is my favorite short collection of words. There's been a lot of different ways you can combine. There's a lot of ways you can combine like 3,000 words. I think that's the best way you can combine 3,000 words.
It's the best chapter of the series for sure.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's hard to like think about because it's perfect because every interaction, every sentence, every exchanging of words, every goodbye is perfect. Like,
and also I thought that she showcased really well the frustration when you know somebody is going to die. Like everyone was there just waiting for him to finish, and getting to that point of just being like where you almost just want it to happen because you know it's coming, and it's just like that prolonged wait of everyone just sitting there and watching, and they were just like getting like there's like, okay, now finish, because like we're just so exhausted, like emotionally drained from this. It got me so bad, just like everyone obviously not wanting him to die, but also like watching him suffer and the prolonged like how long it took.
You ever had someone that you love dying of something that's, you know, taking forever to kill them, and it's a very true experience.
It's exhausting, but it's also like you don't want them to die, but also like you do. Like it's so hard. The
miscommunication between Fool and Fitz at the end about what the other person wanted, what the other person expected. I'm just like, please go die with him. I need this to happen.
And B is like,
B had
literally
to lie
go.
B had to also like lie to make it happen. Like, because she actually asked Fitz in Fool's Assassin, like, do you like? I forget. She probably phrased it better than this. But asked about like if he loved the Fool more than he loved Molly, and he was like, not more, just like in a different way. Like I can't like quantify it. And then at the end, the way B convinces the Fool to go is like, of course he always loved you the most. Like your name's beloved. And then one of my favorite like things about the way the wolf, they create like the entity of the Wolf of the West. And what I think works so well about that is Fitz for this entire thing is someone who's like stuck in the past. He's constantly reminiscing about the past, writing about his past. He's not so good at planning for the future, and he's not so good at appreciating the now. Night Eyes lives completely in the now. He also is not so good at planning for the future. Hey, how am I going to take out this porcupine? He's also not so great at learning from the past. Hey, I should probably not go after that porcupine. The Fool can plan for the future literally magically well.
He's maybe
not so great at appreciating the present, and is not so great as reminiscing from the past. So I love that they all combine, because combined, like they can like are good at like figuring out the future, reminiscing and learning from the past, and appreciating the now. It works so well. I love it.
So we should all strive to be.
Yeah, we so be the Wolf of the West and maybe be like made out of magic rocks. And
he's so Fitz is so inefficient and just being a human that it takes 3 souls to make him complete.
like he's just as like Night Eyes is also like
They're all flawed.
Learn from the past. Like they all have their part where they're like clearly like their strengths, and they complement each other so well. And I think it's why like when they kind of combined into one entity at the end of Fool's Fate, it intuitively felt right for that reason. And that's kind of like I think why it ended up coming all together to the Wolf of the West. Of course he didn't carve a dragon, of course he carved a wolf. How's that for being a Chad?
I love that.
I knew at the beginning of the series I was like, this is gonna end with him dying. So I was like, maybe I won't cry, because like I know it's gonna happen. Jokes.
I actually would have been surprised if he didn't die, but the way it happened, even though I was anticipating it, was just not. It was kind of. It wasn't that it wasn't what I was expecting, but it was not what I was expecting in a lot.
Well,
of ways.
I think also the introduction of B as a POV like made you think that Fitz could die at any time as well. Like you're like, because now we have another POV. Like we can just survive through B, which is why I fell for the first death.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, she's gonna go like a totally different way, maybe leave something open for B, which she did anyways. But
to be or not to be.
from the day I started
Brand.
Assassin's Apprentice, I read the prologue and I went, this dude's dying at the end. Like I was like, there's no way. Like, he's definitely dying. And it did not matter. Like the last 200 pages of that book are just like covered in tears in my edition. Like the pages
knowing someone's gonna like someone who like obviously it's a fictional character, but knowing someone you're gonna care about it die doesn't make it easier when it happens.
Yeah.
Everyone you know will die.
Yeah, and
Well, I think
it's not gonna be easier just because I know that. Like,
yeah,
it's
I
like
think I was like
thinking it would make it easier is like, yeah, I'm gonna stab you later, so now it won't hurt because you're ready for it. It's like, no,
At least I know it's coming.
Well, and I think I was maybe I'd have to look back in my chats and stuff. I think I was like maybe 20% into this final book, and I messaged Scott and I was like, I'm pretty sure he's going to go out the same way as Verity. Like he's going to put, you know, I mean, that wasn't like, oh, I called it because it's pretty, it like builds to that, I think. And so I almost like completely called it. But at the same time, me having that like in my head as a thought did not affect the impact of that ending at all. At all.
Yeah.
Because also, if
I
you
also
at
thought-
the end of Farseer, I would have been like, yeah, like I mean, it literally says we dream of carving our dragon at the last line, and then Tawny Man made me forget about that with the other ending. And yeah.
I couldn't read the last chapter for like 30 minutes because I was crying so hard. Like I was like, I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't see because there was just tears flooding my face. So it took me a while to read that last chapter. That was like a page and a half.
I think that entire time too, we're both getting, you know, we're getting Fitz's perspective as he's doing it, but we're also getting B's perspective, and we're watching her dad do it, and it's just another layer.
And the
of
fact
heartbreak
that
we didn't get.
they just like never got that time together. It just never
Yeah.
happened.
Because
It's
like
so hard.
I think seeing it from another perspective is even better because like we've now seen it from Fitz's perspective when Verity is carving the dragon, and now we see Fitz's perspective of Fitz carving the dragon, and now we have to do like seeing the other person carving the dragon again, but this time it's the person who we've been in the head of for like a million and a half words.
I think one thing that makes the ending so bittersweet, and I think bittersweet is like the only word you can use for this ending because it's so perfect because it's crushing and heartbreaking, but it leaves you with like such a satisfying like, oh wow, it's going to be okay. And what contributes to that for me was that you, like Jordan just said, like you get that heartbreak of knowing that like they never got their father-daughter time, and she never really got to know him for who he was, but she is going to be raised and loved and brought up by everyone who knew Fitz. And they're going to make sure that B knows what made him so special, what made him, you know, so important. But more than anything, they're going to let B know how much he loved her. And I just like, that's just such a happy ending. The fact that she ends up with Kettrican, I'm just like, oh, I'm so happy.
I'm crying
When they're
again.
going away.
How about like
when they're
earlier,
when they're leaving and they hear the wolf, like Kettrican.
I'm like, it's gonna be okay.
I know. I was just like, oh my gosh. It's like everything Fitz wanted is what
I know like Hobb doesn't
really
do
is.
fan service, but if there is a B POV, and there's a Deus Ex Machina where the Wolf of the West comes in and saves people, I'll be totally okay with it.
Yeah.
Want to make that known.
I
Normally
agree.
I'm like, this would be bad writing, but I would make an exception for this scenario. It's not gonna happen.
But yeah, no, the fact that he put, because it's him, it's Night Eyes, it's the Fool. Like he put enough in that wolf that there's going to be a future for that entity that now is that stone wolf, and it's not just going to be a cold dead piece of stone. Like
Yeah,
there's
because
life there.
he interacts with Verity at one point in the series, so
How about we talked about Fitz getting like the reality dose for father? How about the Fool? The Fool was expecting B to be like, and then I'll be the B's parent, and we'll both get along so well. And then B was like, who the crap is this dude?
Yeah, here you go.
That was
Nothing to do with him.
that was very heartbreaking to me.
well,
Watching
because
the
she
the
saw
whole
him as like she saw him because like her dad literally ditched her to go save this guy. Was like peace.
Yeah.
So I think she had like a lot of resentment towards him.
yeah,
And then he's like, I'm your mommy.
Yeah.
I mean, she has no reason to care about the Fool. The Fool just kind of thought
Yeah.
that because he cared for her that she would
Yeah.
care about him, and then kind of got a reality dose, which seeing the Fool not in control again was just really, really heartbreaking, kind of awesome. Hard to read.
Those few chapters after we get the fake out death, before we figure out that Fitz is still alive, and we're with B, and we're with the Fool, and the live shit's returning to dragons finally. Like Paragon turns to the 2 dragons, and we get all the dragons start burning Claire's down. Was
so hard to read,
so good, and so hard to read. Like literally, I was just like, how is there 200 pages left in this book? Because I was just like, I don't know.
I was so stressed from
Fake
Out Death. I was like, I don't think this is real. I don't think he's dead. But I was still so stressed from that point until like we realized he wasn't dead.
Because Fool was all of a sudden in a, when Fitz lost Molly and then had to raise, all of a sudden was like, okay, I'm the main father figure. I am their father, but I'm the main role model in B's life. All of a sudden Fitz dies and Fool's now like this person who I don't know, but is my daughter technically, is now a big part of my life. And she doesn't really want anything to do with them. And she still feels betrayed in some way by Fitz. And it's just very complicated. And it just really, I don't know, hit me on an emotional level before I even knew that Fitz was still alive.
And like in her short 9 years or however old she is, she lost both parents, and so she's like, I don't need a third because like I've been through it.
I got this. Yeah,
she loses the third, who she rejected pretty fast as well.
Yeah,
so.
That's like every adult figure in her life, in one way or another, has left her or let her down, even if it wasn't intentional. When you're a little kid, that's all that matters is the end result. Like her mom died, her dad shanked a homeless dude and then disappeared when she got kidnapped. Lant and Shun were assholes to her. Like, what was the steward's name? I love that guy. And I was pissed.
Revel.
Yeah.
Hey, I love
respect for Revel. He was a good character. He deserved better.
Yeah.
His death was brutal.
He's actually setting records. Lots of fantasy characters are like, I lost both my parents. He's like, I lost all 3 of my parents. So get on my level.
And Wolffather.
Yeah, and Wolf, all 4. Yeah.
Jeez.
She's like, these casuals. Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I lost 2 parents. That's cute.
Cry me a river.
Yeah, I lost 4.
Perseverance is like, my dad died in a barn fire. Oh, really? Well,
yeah. Better luck.
My
next
mom
time.
forgot I existed.
Boo hoo.
Yeah, we're just like, wow, Fitz had it really rough, and when he was 6 years old in Assassin's Apprentice, and now it's like, oh my gosh, no, he didn't. Not compared to
talking about generational trauma.
Yeah, B is like, hold my beer, Dad.
Yeah, B can even trauma better than Fitz. She's better than Fitz at everything.
She's just better at existing.
That's why we need the B trilogy.
She's a lot smarter than Fitz. Let's be real.
I would read a B trilogy so hard.
I'd be scared because I love that where it ended so much.
Oh yeah,
sure. I know.
But also,
I agree.
But also, like, I'd be scared, but like, obviously, I'd read it, and it'd probably be really good. But I'd be scared.
It's easy for me to nonchalantly be like, "Oh, there should be a B trilogy," because I know that there won't be. Like, she would be insane to touch this series ever again. It's perfect, but in my mind, I'm like, I want to see Farseer from Verity's perspective. I want a B trilogy. I want to know, like,
write the entire thing
again, but from different perspectives.
What about a chivalry prequel? I'd take that.
Oh yeah.
I'd take that.
Inject that into my veins.
And I love that too. How I feel like you get to know chivalry really well throughout the course of these 16 books for a character that you literally never meet, never see him on page.
Never on page.
But through letters and his reputation and how people held him, like what regard they held him in, and what just you get little bits, but by the end you feel like he's a real character.
I think you get a lot more respect because, like, in Farseer, it's like, well, what a shit dad. Like, he just left once he realized he was born. And then you kind of see Fitz in the same situation in Tawny Man, and you're kind of like, in these shoes, this seems a lot more reasonable. And then you also get some of, like, his letters in Fitz and the Fool, I think Fool's Assassin, and you can really see, like, he really wanted to stay in Buckkeep, but he just, like, he thought it would be more dangerous for Fitz, which might not obviously be the decision that anyone would make, but I think I grew to respect chivalry more, like, throughout the series. For my university book club, we did Assassin's Apprentice at one point, and we did a Fitz parental figure tier list. And Verity was chivalry was pretty low, and I kind of had to shut up because I'm like, in full hindsight, I'm like, yeah, I'd put him a little bit higher, but
Yeah. It's
Regal
like
was
what Madison was saying about that slow trickle of information that Hobb does throughout the series. It's also in that aspect as well with chivalry. I obviously haven't reread anything yet, but I did look at the first chapter of Assassin's Apprentice when I finished Assassin's Fate, and it literally ends with and a catalyst I became, like the first chapter of Assassin's, and I was just like, holy shit, that is like one heavy line reading that after the end of Assassin's
I think Assassin's Apprentice is a phenomenal book too.
It's
like
so
I
good.
just hear so many, and I always tell people, book 2 is even better because I literally think Royal Assassin, like to this
Royal
day, I
Assassin's
was
so
picking
good.
up against everything. I love that book, but like Assassin's Apprentice to me, I always feel dirty being like, well, just get the Royal Assassin because like I think AA does a ton of stuff right.
It's phenomenal. Like
I think it's phenomenal. Yeah.
It's the most I've ever bumped up a book on reread score where I was like, what was past me talking about? Like, drunk?
I can't imagine that book on a reread is just
and it was like it was both. It was one because like, okay, no, if I read this for the first time now, I would like it more, and also it's better on reread, so it got like the double boost.
Yeah. And I anytime it comes out of my mouth, I like cringe because no one likes to be told this, but it really is a series that I'm like, oh, wait till you reread it.
Yeah.
Me trying to sell the Locked Tomb. I'm like, if you reread it, you'll love it.
But it's not one.
Nick loves a Locked Tomb.
We're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, I refuse. I refuse.
No, we'll move to the topic of another book.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a series that I reread is not necessary, but if it's something that you're interested in, I can't recommend it enough because just having reread Farseer in the last couple of months has already taken my like appreciation of everything that comes afterwards up so many notches because that's why I just don't buy it that it was supposed to end at Tawny Man because
there's no way
there are seeds that are planted from the first.
I'm
going with
after
you and Hobb, Jake.
And it's not like I'm like this series is mid and then I reread it and I'm like, no, it's actually brilliant. I'm like, no, it was my favorite series ever, and now I'm rereading it and I'm like, oh crap, it's even better than I thought it was.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So it's your favorite, Jake?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Realm of the Elderlings is my favorite completed fantasy series,
and I'm currently coming up with my next videos, which are going to be higher effort, are going to be top 5 incomplete and complete series. Shocking no one, Realm of the Elderlings will be at 1. Yeah,
Alex.
Yeah, I think Realm of the Elderlings is my favorite too.
Really? Wow.
I think finishing this last trilogy, it passed Locked Tomb for me. So
definitely
I like a little bit more than I like Locked Tomb.
Jake.
I mean, so for me, like I can never ever move past Westeros. Like nothing will ever top Song of Ice and Fire for me. But
if I'm going to completed,
Jimmy just nodding.
But if I say completed series, then it's a slam dunk. Like nothing else even comes close. But anytime sometimes I can let bitterness creep in. But anytime I revisit Westeros, I'm just like, nah. I'm sorry. This is my entire
Madison.
life.
Let me give you a cheat code.
What's that?
Realm of the Elderlings is your favorite Finnish series of all time.
Yeah.
That's what I say. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I used to say that a lot.
No, that's
it's a fun way of giving them both the props,
Yes, but and I love the fact that they really do respect each other, and you can I feel that. So,
have you watched their discussion together?
I've seen clips of it, but I haven't seen the whole thing.
Yeah, so they share an editor, and their editor is the interviewer. And
I love that.
It is.
I want to be that editor.
That might be the best YouTube video, just like generally.
Yeah,
that
is really
Okay,
good.
I'm gonna
Stephen King
watch it tonight.
I'll watch it too.
Stephen King, George R. R. Martin one is good too.
How do you write so fucking fast?
It's like, just write 6 pages a day. And Gurm is like, that's your trick to writing fast? Write more pages per day? Yeah, why didn't I think of that?
George R. R. Martin should just do more cocaine. Maybe he'll write more books.
No, not at this age.
No, then we'll get Tommy
the man.
I'm like,
Tommy
Chance with Tommy Knockers.
I got him on a treadmill. He's on Atkins.
A feast
like,
for Tommy Knockers.
I was like, you stay away from George. He's probably got diabetes and he can't handle this. He cannot
we
handle
need Georgie to make it
any
through.
health concerns.
We do. Evie says Assassin's Apprentice was her favorite book in the whole series until Fool's Assassin, and then Assassin's Fate, Fool's Assassin, Assassin's Apprentice.
You know what's cool is
I
I don't think I've ever came across somebody that has the same ranking as me. But anytime I see someone else's, I'm like, "That's good. That's good. I'm down for that."
That's me with like Sun Eater. Anytime I see anyone's Sun Eater rankings, I'm like,
ranking.
"Yeah, good
I'm like,
ranking."
that's good. That's good.
I'm like, oh, someone's like, yeah, Fool's Quest
get it,
is
I
like
get
one
it.
of my favorite. I'm like, yeah, I agree. And then I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
The
get it.
Homer on
Fool's
the
Quest is my
couch
ninth
with the
favorite.
flag for whatever series it is.
Like, I've never seen anyone say their favorite is Dragon Haven, but like that would make me scratch my head. I'd be like,
was Amanda's
okay.
favorite Dragon Haven or Dragon Keeper?
No, first book one.
Haven.
Okay, Dragon Keeper. Okay.
Drag Keeper.
that's rough, but
Wild.
okay.
Ben really likes.
Wild.
Amanda has since flipped. She used to love Realm of the Elderlings, and now she doesn't like it anymore, and it hurts my soul. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's a big flip.
Hey,
Tell me
Realm of
about
the
it.
Elderly, yeah, I would say
It's Jimmy's
Rain
Discord
Wild-
is just like a corrupting influence.
It's very
Um,
upsetting.
I'm only resist it because I have like mod privileges. But if I didn't, I would start hating Realm of the Elderlings and Dandelion Dynasty by commenting.
I've actually muted my Robin
You'll
Hobb
convince
channel on my
yourself.
Discord before and been like, Jake, you just gotta
you
watch
need to
it.
monitor
I
it.
can't-
And
I
I'm
can't
like,
do this.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple safe spaces I go on the internet where I'm just like, everyone here loves Realm of the Elderlings. And like, I don't need an echo chamber, but like, I don't need that kind of negativity in my life either.
Well,
like, it gets
yeah.
my blood pressure up.
Well, I wouldn't need an echo chamber, but so many other people are too busy being wrong. So like
Wrong.
sometimes I need it, you know?
well, here's the thing.
Out here with bad opinions.
There are series that to me are like kind of off to the side where I'm aware of the flaws and I hear that, but I'm like beyond that discussion at this point. Like you're not going to change my mind. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
and I know I've had the conversations over and over and over again. And like, for instance, one of the big things that I don't like about the Fitz in the Full trilogy is how repetitive some of the information is, because it's clear she was
Yes.
trying to update the readers who were, and I think that this could be a publisher thing, because
think it
publishers do push people to put in reminders. I'd like to give her that pass, but even if we don't, like, I just don't like how repetitive it is, because I'm binging it, 10 years later. So like, and that's how the work's going to be consumed by the majority of your readers. So I believe that you should actually try not to do those things unless if you feel it's absolutely necessary. But same thing with the Song of Ice and Fire and First Law. Like these three series specifically, I actually am way more open for some reason about Malazan, because I'm still trying to figure things out in that series maybe. But First Law, A Song of Ice, Fire, and Realm of the Elderlings is like, the science is settled for me, guys. So now I'm more
My thoughts are
interested in,
set.
yeah, I'm
You can leave your evidence on the table.
and I'm fine with anybody saying like their opinion. I'm not trying to sound whatever, like totally cool. But the conversations that I'm interested in having now go beyond somebody who reads 100 books a year.
What's wrong with it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's talking to people like Derry, or to talk, in A Song of Ice and Fire, like I have a podcast that we do. Like I'm getting way more value out of that than I am just like, is this bad or good? And like, I don't really care about that.
Yeah, I'm
anymore.
with you on that. There's a handful of series that I'm like, I get it that one of my favorite series just didn't land for you, because I understand that there's something called personal preference and taste, and some people don't have taste. That's fine. But what gets me is when people get parts wrong, because there's opinions and then there's the text, right? Like some things you don't really dispute because it's there. And if you didn't get that, or if you don't remember that, like, don't come at me and say that my opinion is invalid because you just didn't like it, because you missed that. Like, you don't understand it like I do. That makes you wrong in a way, and I'm not going to hold it against you, but don't come at me like that when there's opinions and there's sometimes just kind of being wrong about something. So
I
don't
get
need
wrong
that
about whether
conversation
you like a
anymore.
book, but if you say I don't like the Lord of the Rings because at the end Frodo just destroys the ring easily and overcomes it, you're not wrong to not like Lord of the Rings, but your reasoning is just wrong. Like, that just didn't happen in the book.
Yeah, and so I think that's kind of what Jimmy's saying too. Is I'm kind of past and over having those types of conversations, because there's not really anything you can say to me now that I'll be like, you're right, never mind, this does suck.
I don't know if
that's
that's
never
true for
gonna
like
happen.
any series. I don't know if I'm ever going to read a book, love it, and then someone's going to be like, well, what about this? And I'm going to be like, never mind. I didn't enjoy that.
I will leave enough room to say
Whoa.
this, that there might be a compelling way of going about the flaws that exist in the series that would be interesting to listen to. But after hearing the same thing that's repeated, because honestly, like, you know, in the space that we're in, things kind of get repeated ad nauseum. Like, honestly, if you want to see anyone's Malazan thoughts, just watch AP and Phillips videos, because it's just people being like, I remember hearing this. And it's just like, it's the same shit. So a lot of the flaw conversation is the same shit. And it's just like, I'm not getting much out of this. And whenever you move past that, it's not really what we do here. We read a lot of books. We experience a whole different ton of stories and different authors. So it's kind of, I don't want to say surface level, but a lot of it tends to trend that way. You're only going to go so deep because you're going to move on to the next thing and next thing. So when you take a series and kind of stick it over to the side, and it means a lot to you, and you start getting into more of the details, like that becomes a series that gets better over time, instead of just being a memory of like thumbs up or thumbs down. Yeah. And I'm looking for series to do that with. But the fact of the matter is, for me personally, not a lot of them exist. So I'm going to continue to keep talking about Westeros. I'm going to keep talking about Buckkeep, and I'm going to keep talking about Genebacchus. And like, I hope I get to add more to that list, but they're few and far between. And I think that's why readers are, tend to be emotional about, the series that they really love.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a lot more likely to be convinced the other way. Like, I find it very unlikely that I could read a book and be like, that rules, and then I'm going to watch someone talk and I'm going to be like, no, that doesn't rule. It's a lot more likely I'm going to read a book and be like, I didn't really like that for these reasons. And then I'll see someone be like, okay, but what about this, this, and this? And I'm going to be like, oh,
yeah,
that's a good point.
I'd agree with that.
I should try that again. That's a lot more likely to me. I don't think I'm ever gonna like read something and like it and then watch someone's negative review and be like, you're right, that was garbage. Like, no.
I'd like to think that's somewhat of a sign of maturity too, like to know that like I trust my own opinions, and I'm obviously open to have conversation and to listen, and I think I'm pretty good at going, oh, that is a good point, I'm glad you brought that up. But like, I know what I like, and I trust my taste at this point.
Yeah. Jimmy, you've brought it up quite a few times, like over the last couple of months, in the terms of it's not so much about what you like and what you don't like. It's more, what's more interesting almost now is like why you like something and why you don't like something. And so when you find something you do like for me, I guess right now, Realm of the Elderlings, I want to seek more content of it and not content of people saying they like it or don't like it. It wants to be content like digging into a single chapter of Fool's Assassin and really digging into the nitty gritty of it.
Maybe like a video about a chapter from Salem to Sarantium that might have
like that.
Exactly. Yeah. You gotta do more of those.
More content like that.
That got like 50 views. That got no one watched, which I
well, that's the thing. You are immediately making your circle smaller.
Yeah.
And I got news for you. This is a total side, but I got news for you guys. Like the audience of BookTube has changed. Reviews are now too narrow. Everything has to be a generalized top 5, top 7, top 10, and I make those videos too.
They're fun
but I really have noticed that like that seems to be the thing. Like people want less specialized things and they want broader things, which I guess makes sense, right? Bigger.
But I think reviews and stuff are evergreen content, so like I don't get a lot of clicks initially, but
I agree with that.
Over time they'll do better because people Google search engine a title, and so it'll come up and be like, oh, will continue to pay. It's like residual income.
Yeah, I have two reviews up that are some of my most viewed videos.
Oh, I'd like to know. A lot of times people see this, and it's like, oh,
fairy tale
care about views. It's just nice when you make thing and you're like, oh, more people watched it. That means more people.
No, absolutely.
It always feels good. I'm actually anti the whole like book review. Like I don't do book reviews because they don't do good. Like if I have to hear one more reviewer complain about reviewing, I'm going to bash my head off a frying pan. Like I can't stand to hear this anymore. And all of my most popular videos, and I know that's anecdotal, they're all reviews. So I'm not saying, I guess what I'm just saying is like the circle is smaller if you cover a certain book, right? There's only a handful of books that appeal to a broad audience. So
and also for like the spoiler content, I have a Dresden spoilery video that at first no one watched, but that's one that people keep watching. And I
Mhm.
mean, it's totally
'Cause as they
possible that'll
finish
happen.
it,
Like,
yeah.
especially if I can get more people to read Sarantine, they'll be like, oh, let's check out this video. And that's true for reviews. Like, you know, if you watch a TBR, like a lot more people watch the TBR, but no one goes like, oh, I wonder what Jake was going to read in August of 2021. I'm going to
right.
go back and check. Well, someone might be like, someone might
should
read
read
the
what he
lines
said
of
he was
our
gonna
song and be like, yeah, I'm going to go watch Jake's review, you know?
Totally.
There's also
Yeah,
like
but
this is
Or-
getting into a whole nother thing, but like there's also like this aversion to spoilers that I share. But I don't. It's weird because I do manga content on my other channel. Manga fans don't care about any of that. It's like really interesting. Like they care about big spoilers, but like I don't know. I watched an entire like well, I should say half of it, like a couple hour Blame video the other day, which is a manga. And it spoiled like the first half of the thing, and I'm like, I don't even care. I'm gonna read this. This is awesome. But if you did it in a book, I'd be like, I'm not reading it. I don't know
Don't
why
watch
that
my
is. How dare
Sarah
you.
Ranting video. You'll be like, chapter 3 spoiled.
I just don't. I don't. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that Alex
How's your
brings up
TV
is like
shows?
the content is, you know, more narrow because less people want to do that deep dive.
Mm.
That makes, in my opinion, it more special. In a
And
lot
I
of
get
ways.
more value
Yep.
out of participating and stuff like that. I mean, I
Yeah.
used
Mhm.
to be a part of a Song of Ice and Fire reread podcast, and each week we would dissect 3 chapters. Guess what? Every episode is about 3 hours long.
Yeah, we do
because
one chapter a week
That's awesome.
at Bend the Knee because it's so dense.
it's just it never. And again, there would be weeks we had 8 people listening. Like, I mean, it was for us, but like I never get tired of making that type of content because that's why I read. And it's fine that every book isn't a new all-time favorite, but the fact that I know that any book could be the new favorite is what makes it so exciting. And then having
agree.
this experience to come back to and these conversations that I said in the beginning, I'll never get tired of it. Like, that's why we do this.
Yeah, and in Realm of the Elderlings, to kind of tie it back to Realm of the Elderlings, it was the first time I felt like I found something that had that little bit of magic of A Song of Ice and Fire that I had been looking for. I'd read a lot of things I really loved, like First Law and Dagger and the Coin, which are always thrown at people. But Realm of the Elderlings, I don't know. I can't put into words really.
It's in a league of its own.
Yeah, it's just the unreliable narrator stuff is there, like the miscommunication by distance trope. There's a lot of similarities between the series. They're very, very different. But that was like, I was like, man, there's hope. Like, there's hope to find a next favorite. And Realm of the Elderlings, without a doubt, is like, you know, a pillar of who I am as a reader.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
By the way, for the
I
like,
love books that like make
on
you
how
wanna
much stuff to
slow
talk about a
down and
chapter.
whatnot.
My setup to random thing was originally I was going to try like a short. I was like, oh, I can review a chapter in a short. And then I went through all the stuff that I wanted to say about the chapter. And I was like,
Like, no, you can't.
1
this
minute.
is not a short. This is like a 12-minute
No.
video.
Alex, you said that you like books that make you slow down. I agree.
Yeah, I do. I think because, you know, I feel like lately there's a lot of books I want to read, and I find some of them, while I enjoy them, I do just want, you know, I'll read it and then I'll move on to the next one, and I will not really think about it that much. And the books that I find myself thinking on like months after finishing are the ones that stick with me the most, and they're also end up being the books that I want to last while I'm reading them, even if I can't really put them down. So like this past month was Lions of Alverson. Like I felt that way when I was reading that book because I was just like, this book is only 500 pages or something, but I didn't want it to end, and I was like, I wish this was a series.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, I was like, this could be a sweet series. And Realm of the Elderlings the same way. So like, even though I needed to know what was happening, I like needed all the answers because I desperately wanted to know what the hell forging was and like what the skill is and all this stuff. You know, I also didn't want it to end for the same reason. I like really wanted to savor
Absolutely.
this
I remember
900-page book.
Like, yeah, you can't put it down. And so I kind of read that final trilogy in an alarmingly short amount of time, but not because I was like, oh, I got to, you know, win the race. I just couldn't put it down. But I remember one of the things I kind of grieved when it was over is I was like, I am never going to read that for the first time again. And that's always the goal, is to read a book that when you're done, it hits you. I will never experience that for the first time again. And that should be sad. Like, there's lots of books I hope to reread someday, but when it leaves you with that, like, it's over. Like, that first experience is over. A book should take part of your soul and kill it. And if it doesn't, then what are you doing?
This is also why even you should read all the previous stuff, because even if you would still enjoy it if you didn't read Wayne Wilds, you only have one chance to read it for the first time. You can
Right.
reread it,
Yep.
but you
Right.
cannot read it for the first time a second time. So make it as good as it can be.
I agree. Jimmy, have you read Willful Princess? Have you read that yet?
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's so
It's,
good.
it's
Yeah,
one of the
but-
books that I feel like I don't talk about enough, actually.
Yeah, it
And
made
if
me.
I
I
had the
remember I was
gall, I
watching
should
your
have made a
top 10, and I'd forgotten about it for last year. And then I saw Novella was 10, and I was like, oh, yeah, you read Willful Princess. Novellas are included. And then it wasn't there. And then you were like, darn.
So I actually haven't read it, and I was gonna save it for my reread.
What?
It's
Yeah.
really good.
Okay.
Well,
It's
I
so
read it
good.
after the
I
fact.
read it before.
and I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
I read it after Astro.
I could see it both ways. Yeah, for sure. I read it right
I
before
should have
Fool's
read it.
Errand. It definitely helped. But
Yeah.
No, wait, I read it. That's
was-
not true. I read it
cool
after
seeing a
Fool's
novella
Errand.
by
I
Hobb.
read it in between Tawny Man and Rain Wilds. You can read it whenever you want. It doesn't really
So
matter.
good.
Yeah, you can.
Like if you need a reminder down the road. That
Yeah,
like,
if basically, Madison, if you see people like crap talking Robin Hobb and you just want to remind yourself on how it hits different, grab
I'll never
Willful Princess.
forget.
Bang
No,
it
I-
out in a day.
yeah,
Be
I-
like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, that goes hard.
God.
I have that, and I have the short story collection too.
Yeah, I'm still holding
And
Oh, I want to read that. Inheritance.
I have them.
I own it. I
Waiting.
haven't read it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
All right, so we are talk about all sorts of stuff.
All
So
kinds
let me
of stuff.
circle it back around to Fitz and the Fool and the Realm of the Elderlings, and I guess just for the fun, and it doesn't really matter because we all like different things for different reasons. Just let's have everyone go around and just say what your favorite sub series is within the Realm of the Elderlings, if you have one. Jordan, you shook your head, so
I don't
go
know.
first, no.
Come to me. Come to me last.
I mean, I'll go first.
Okay.
God, I say that, but okay. Live Ship Traders is a perfect trilogy, in my
Perfection.
opinion.
yeah.
And so it's hard for me not to answer that because it stands on its own so well. Now, by no means am I saying that anyone should read it as a standalone. I'm just saying it stands on its own really, really well. And it does everything she does well at the best it's done, I think. So
Yeah.
I want to
Most
say Live Ship
efficiently.
Traders, but honestly, I think this final trilogy is so perfect that it's hard not to include it in the conversation. But for the sake of an answer, I will say Live Ship Traders.
Nice. Jimmy, what about you? Do you have one?
Yeah, Fitz in the Fool. It's Fitz in the Fool
the
because
Fool.
like she added a POV like 15 books in. It's insane.
Yeah, that's so
Just-
awesome.
It's
Just
ridiculous.
pays off so well.
Yeah.
Jake, yours Fits in the Fool, right? I believe.
No, my Live Ships, my favorite collection of words. It's
Oh,
really
duh,
close.
yeah.
So Assassin's
Yeah.
Fate is my favorite individual book.
Okay.
But Live Ship is barely my favorite trilogy. And then it depends what day you ask me on between Tawny Man and Fitz and the Fool. And then Farseer and then Rain Wilds. But Live Ship is one I really love. I think third person Hobb adds to it in the way we get to see everything from like so many different perspectives. Like the same way seeing it
Yeah,
from
it's
B
really
and
cool.
Fitz's
Mhm.
perspective,
Yeah.
but like even more. I will say I think Tawny Man and Fitz and the Fool have more individual moments that like I remember the emotions I felt more.
Sure.
But definitely when I was reading it, I was consistently the most mesmerized by Live Ship. And I really like a lot of
Yeah.
the thematic stuff it has, but it's close. But Live Ship's close
Cool.
but clear. Number one.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say
Jordan, how about you?
it might be recency bias, but I think I'm gonna say Fitz in the Fool. If before reading Assassin's Fate, I probably still would have said Live Ship, but yeah, I think after finishing it, it's Fitz in the Fool. Live Ship it's just
Yeah.
stunning. Though.
Yeah.
I love Live Ship so much.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. I think Fits in the Fool for me is just the best, and it might be recency bias, but I also don't see this series ending any other way after reading
Any
it.
other
And
way.
I think it also kind of makes everything else that comes before it better in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
people always say that about good endings, but I truly think that this trilogy does that for a lot of the books in the series. So.
Nice.
People say it about good endings because it's true. pretty often.
Because they should do that.
Yeah.
But it's just so nice to see, because how many times do you read a series that's really special and has so much good about it, but then the ending is just kind of like, I don't know, like it kind of let me down, or it wasn't what I was hoping for, or it was too bleak, or there's too much fan service. But like, this is, I think, a perfect ending to a series.
It's beautiful.
I agree.
I generally don't believe in perfection for books, but it's as close as I got.
As close as I've ever seen.
9.9999.
10 is I can't think of a way that I would like it more.
Well, my biggest criticism that I'll stand by is that I think they have terrible titles. I know it's like a meme. It's become its own meme, but I still to this day have to look behind me and be like, oh yeah, you know, the middle one, Fool's Quest. Like,
if someone asks me what my favorite book is, I say the trilogy name, and then I say the last book in that trilogy. I don't say the book name. When it was Ship of Magic for 2 months, I was like, oh, it's the first book. What's my favorite book of all time? Oh, the first book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy. Not my favorite book of all time is Ship of Magic. Well, what's your favorite book of all time now? Oh, it's the final book in the Realm of the Elderlings. It's we're not going to say the name, but it's the final book.
Say a bunch of words.
Yeah.
All right, so we are over 2 hours, and I think we've just about touched everything that we're gonna touch on when it comes to the Fitz of the Fool trilogy in this chat. So with that, I'm going to let all my guests go, but thank you all of you for joining the conversation. This was a lot of fun. Thanks to everyone in the chat for watching and participating. This was just a great discussion and definitely added to my reading experience for going through this for the first time, and hopefully everyone else who was watching it. So
thanks for having me on, Alex. I appreciate
thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. All right. I'll see you guys later.
See ya.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.